Oh, guys, it is that time of day again for the Razor Greshu Lightseekers Twitch stream. Shall we get into this? Shall we start off? All right, guys. Thank you very much again for tuning in and watching me make a complete fool of myself on live camera. Woo! As previous reviews have been going, I will start with the disclaimer. My opinion on these cards is simply my opinion. Do not take it for word. Do not write it in stone. Don't say, well, Frank or Razor Greshu said this card is amazing, so it's got to be amazing, or this card is bad, so I'll never even touch this card. Please do not do that. My review is simply looking at the card, stating whether or not it was in my opinion, a well-designed card, a card that can be used in several different decks, if it's specifically for a certain type of archetype that they're maybe going for, if it's going to be good compared to the previous meta. I don't know what this new meta has hold. I've started to look at a lot more cards than I have previously, so my opinions have started to flip-flop back and forth on whether or not a card can be used, whether it can be viable within maybe even just a draft, that's what it's used for, or a really fun constructed deck based around an archetype that I'm kind of developing in my head. But at the end of the day, everything I say here is strictly opinion. Take it or leave it. If you guys want to discuss with me, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to talk about cards. I'm here to talk about this game, get people's interest into it, especially with the Kindred app coming out this week. Oh my god, this week! I'm so excited. But I want to get these reviews going. I want to get my entire review of the entire Kindred set done before I actually start jumping in and building all these really fun decks, so you guys kind of get like an inside view of where my mind is at for this new set. With that being said, let's dive into nature, shall we? Nature is green. It has animal, forest, and soul. And I absolutely love this set. So let's start off with the first card we have here, Ashwood Nurturer. Alright, so we got an animal card, defend, 2 healing, move a beast card from your deck to your hand. I think this is a really well-designed card. Beasts, as we've been seeing going through the astral stuff, I know Storm coming up tomorrow, everyone, 7 and 9 tomorrow, will also have more beasts in it. Beasts is a very, very broad category of the new family set I've been finding. Beasts, elementals, I think, are some of the really ones that scatter around multiple alignments. So this one, I mean, could easily be splashed into other alignments too, which I think is great. We were also discussing yesterday that one of the cards in Mountain was essentially kind of the opposite of this card. Well, not opposite, but it's healing instead of damage. But it's a card fetch for a specific card. So if you're running a beast themed deck, this is amazing. It's 2 healing, draw a specific card. It's not even like a beast animal card or a beast soul card or something like that. It's just a beast card. So it can be a buff, attack, or defend. If you find a buff or a beast card that you just really need in certain situations, this card is amazing. I think this is going to be maybe, I'd see maybe a 2, maybe even a 3 include in some decks, depending on how fast-paced the beast archetype is, for how aggressive. Like, I've been kind of commenting on all the heroes that rotate stuff faster. I think it leans more towards a more aggressive style archetype, but we'll see. We'll see how this all develops, what people come up with, how they utilize the beast archetype. But I do believe this is going to be a great card. If you're running a beast archetype, it's almost an auto-include, just because of how potent a card draw is, but specific card draw can be in decks like this. Mind you, it is just 2 healing. I don't think there's actually a whole lot of animal defend cards from the old set to really look at in comparison. All the defends and healing were more like nature and soul, so having something that you can splash in with animal for the aggressive side is just, I think it's really good. I think it's really fun. I'm going to give this card a 4-star. It's just a really, really well-designed card. Specific card fetch, can be used a lot. I mean, even in draft, with how prominent beasts are, I think you draft one of these in draft, just even if you have like 2 beast cards in your deck that you just really want to make sure you draw. This card is really good. I mean, it's a solid card, very well built. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing but positive things about this card. I think it's a really well good card. I think you're just going to see it a lot in beast archetypes. Next one, Beast Caller. All right, we have a forest continuous buff. When a beast buff you or your enemy controls expires, draw 1 card. If it was your buff, also move it to the bottom of your deck. This, I think, is amazing. I think this is going to be really fun to play in a beast deck. Probably only a 1 of. Like I said, this is also not a beast buff, so you can't do fun things with this buff also. There's no, kind of how the Mountain card was, where it doesn't have that brand new unique, where if you had multiples, it does something else different. But I think this card is actually just going to be really good. You're also probably going to see this in draft as well, if beasts are becoming more prominent, depending on how many beast buffs there are. which from what I've been seeing from the heroes, rotating beast buffs, is probably really prominent. Because it's like when it expires, you or your opponent, you draw cards. That's just card value. This buff does nothing increase for damage, does nothing defensive-wise. It's just like, hey, I have this out here, and if you want to keep playing, you know, your cards, I'm going to draw cards from it. It's consistent value when played properly, when played against an appropriate deck. But like I said, it's one of those cards where it's like, I don't want to have multiples out. I don't want to draw it late game. So you're just going to want to basically have one of it in the deck. I think one of is a perfectly fine card for a beast archetype in green. I don't know how beast works with nature or with forest, so I don't know if you're going to want to really splash this into other decks, but we'll see. That's the whole fun of using all these weapons, utilizing these weapons. Sorry, tongue tied, and just figuring out some really fun archetypes. But I think this is a good card for beasts. Like I said, especially going back several times to the heroes that rotate your beast buffs faster. It makes them expire faster, which means you get card draw. It's going to be good value, I think. I think it's going to be really good value in beasts to be able to lay this, rotate your beast buffs, even past the fourth corner to expire them quickly so that you can draw a card. I think it's actually going to be really good. I am, however, probably going to give this just like a 3.5 because all it does is generate card draw, but conditional card draw. And one of those things, it's like I would much rather just have consistent card draw that I know I'm going to get something for than have this card need a requirement for me to do it. That's why it's kind of like below a 4 rating. But 3.5, just because when it's out there, it's one of those things where your opponent is going to find annoying if you just keep overdrawing cards on them. But at the same time, it's just card draw. It's not damage to them when they attack. It's not damage prevention, and they can you know, take it or leave it. It's like, okay, well, you're drawing a card. Cool. I'm gonna keep doing my game plan and hope that you don't draw buff removal or something like that. It's one of those things. Like, it's not that threatening. It's just, it's a good card. It's a good card. Bloomback Draga. All right, we got our first beast buff, everybody. Woo! All right, we got Forest. 2 corners, clunky corners, mind you. 1 and 1. Unique, so obviously you can't have more than one of these out, or you can, but one of them is dormant, so you can't use the abilities on each other, which is fine. Defendability, restart one of your other action buffs. Now I see why it is unique, because if you had 2 out, you could use them on each other to get like an infinite ability loop, kind of how Dread does it, and use those abilities back and forth to trigger other things infinitely. But I mean, I think this is a solid card. It is a beast, so it can run with beast energy, but its ability is just, it does what nature does really well, and that's restarting your buffs. It's getting better value out of your buffs. Like, if they don't remove them, that buff can stay out there, if it's a 4-corner buff, for like 8 turns or 12 turns. It's one of those, like, you get max value. And because it is clunky corner, obviously, you get to use it twice, which is amazing. It's only 1 buff, completely fine with that. Yeah, there's a lot of good things about this card. And especially, like, if you do something that rotates your buffs faster, you can use this to restart it. Other weird stuff. I know Old Oak was a card in Soul that was used a lot in some of the nature decks to just restart really valuable buffs. Especially like Spectral Web. Everyone has their opinion on that card. I can write a 30-minute video on that card. It just love-hate. Again, love-hate. But yeah, Bloomback Draga it's going to be a really solid card. It's like a 4.5 in my opinion. It's right up there in the 5-point area. Like, it's almost a perfect card. Because it gets that beast family, because it has a defendability, restart your buff, and all that stuff like that. It's a solid card. The best part about it is it doesn't have burn. You can bring it back. You can use it in some forest stuff. I know one of my buddies, just kind of give you a crude example. I have seen them play this. This is kind of like sidestepping to the, hey, just looking at the solid card. But like, people have played Thundervine. Because Thundervine has forests in it, and if you discard it for a forest card, you increase lightning. So it's like, hey, cool, I can do that. But when you lay Storm Shaman, Bloomback Draga, and you can just restart Storm Shaman like twice, that's amazing value. Like, that's ridiculous. So even just splashing some forest in there for like the minor heals, or this card alone, to get better value out of a lot of your buffs, could be really, really strong. Like, this card is one of those that you'd almost just splash in just for this card. That's how good this card is. Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very strong card that I can almost guarantee, if you're running Forest and you're kind of playing that more slow metagame, this is going to help you get better value out of your cards in a lot of situations. especially because it can be brought back with beast stuff. It can be fetched with beast cards. It's just it fits that niche in the family really really well, and I love these new families, guys. I love them so much. Building a deck around them is going to be my favorite thing in this new set. So that's what I give to this one. Bramble Spike Hunter. All right, we have XX3. Damage to your target. Restart this buff when you attack. I mean, I think it's okay. I think it's no. You're gonna wait 2 corners for 3, and unfortunately, it doesn't have a family onto it, which is like, I wish that everything had families, but that's just me. That's just me. And my opinion is my opinion. But I mean, when you attack, you get to restart this buff. Now, mind you, you could run a weapon that has an attack ability that would count, and you always just use that ability on this one. It's kind of like a mini Stone Tusk or Stone. What's the Tusker in nature that has basically a defend ability, restart this buff on the 3rd corner that does 6. It's like a mini one of that. And I mean, having something like that, obviously that buff has an ability in there to restart this, whereas this one, you can attack. You can be really aggressive with this and get it to restart just from attacking and attacking, which I think could be just Stampeding Tusker. Thank you. Oh, the White Wolf is back. Awesome. All right, so we have it's like a mini Stampeding Tusker. Where, like I said, if you're going very aggressive. However, from what I understand, there are not many attack cards in prior nature decks. A lot of them were buff heavy for like Mantic's Hatchlings, Insect Swarm, all this other crazy stuff that was just consistent buffs, all buff based, and then a lot of defend cards for healing, restarting your buffs, and all that stuff like that. So I don't know how this one will particularly fit into the new nature meta, if it is going to be very attack heavy, if it's going to be one of those cards that you use the nature animal weapon and splash this one into a more attack heavy deck just to kind of get this value going. But even then, I feel like there's a lot better animal cards to utilize splashing into other stuff than just this one. I'm going to give this like it's really hard to value this on how much new green stuff there is because we haven't looked at it yet, but I'm going to give it like a 2. You're probably, unfortunately, not going to see it in a whole lot of decks compared to prior nature cards. It does what it does completely fine, but like I said, the nature archetype as a whole, from what it has been, has not necessarily had a lot of attack cards outside of its buff removal. So just being able to get value out of this, you have to hold your attack cards till the right moment. When you're playing an attack heavy deck or something like that, you want to be aggressive. You want to be able to delay it every turn. And holding this for like 2 turns, your attack cards, just to get an extra 3 damage is just, it's a niche that I don't feel is worth it to run this card in the deck. I mean, even so, it's 2 corners to do 3 damage compared to other cards like, just outside of this order, Draga Scorcher, 1 turn to do 6. I'd much rather have something like that. I mean, maybe having this be like 4 damage maybe would have made it worth it. I know it's completely, like if it was 4 damage, it would be a lot better because 4, 8, 12, just like the consistent cyclical damage that they're trying to go with in this. But I just don't think Nature has a lot of attack cards that you would run outside of their buff damage to utilize this card the way that it wants to be utilized. That's why I'm kind of giving it a 2 rating, because I mean it's a well-designed card. It's just not going to see play compared to a lot of their stuff. So that's my review. Canopy Creeper. All right, we have the first Insectoid. Oh, guys, I have no idea how Insectoid is going to play out. I don't know if it's aggressive. I don't know if it's defensive. I don't know what it does, and I cannot wait to explore this because it's like 95% of it is in Nature. It's what Nature kind of got as its own personal family, kind of like how Undead was Dread, Chimchu was Astral. Insectoid is in the Nature, and I love how they have like one really good clan set of stuff for each alignment, and then like kind of spread out on a few of the other families. I think that's really cool that you give one specific one their own kind of family to utilize strongly. So we have a Forest Defend card, 2 healing. If your last discarded card is a beast buff, move it into play. I mean, that's not bad. So this is obviously not meant for an Insectoid deck. It's meant for more of a beast deck, kind of a synergy hybrid, kind of how Mountain was the elements and the locations are working together. This is the beast and Insectoid. Depending on what beast buffs you're running, I mean, like I said, you could utilize really good stuff with just the cards that we've looked back. The Bloomback Draga. Use the defend ability. Obviously, you'd have to have Forest Mastery to be able to utilize both this in the same turn. But Bloomback Draga to restart one of your buffs, and then lay this to move Bloomback Draga back into play and be like, hey guys, I'm going to keep restarting my buffs. I'm going to be super annoying green like that, which is what green does really well, is consistently keep their buffs on the board when you thought they were going to be rotated and expiring out. So, I mean, I think this card, it's going to be okay. Obviously, it's very conditional. You have to wait till a beast buff goes in the discard pile. But the way green has always been playing, like I said, with Old Oak, with Bloomback Dragonout, is when your buffs are like continuously being restarted, making it so they don't go to the graveyard. I don't know how well this card is going to do compared to, like, say, running Old Oak just to keep the buff in play as opposed to putting it back into play. Maybe there's some really good beast buffs that say, like, when it comes into play, do this. Maybe there's a card out there like you really want to keep on the board and it's really threatening and your opponent removes it and then you just bring it back. Kind of how Geode Hatchling does with Mountain, but Geode Hatchling is just your buff. This is beast buff, has to be it. So I'm like I really like the thought behind this card, but I just don't see it being played in a very aggressive beast style deck. Maybe there's a beast deck out there that's like really wants to play the long game, really goes into like attrition style, and this one would be really good for it. It is healing. It is put a beast buff back into play after you make it expire or something like that, or it just expires because you can't restart it for some reason. But this again is it's a 2-star card. I like the aspect of where they were trying to go with it, but I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play, unfortunately, compared to what else I've been seeing from just Astral Beasts and all this other stuff. Then again, maybe this is something that you splash the forest into another alignment that doesn't restart a whole lot, has stuff expire a whole lot, like Storm or like Astral does with their beasts, and it's one that you want in that deck to bring stuff back for more attrition and cyclical damage. So maybe that's what it's meant for, is outside of the nature alignment. But I'm going to give it a 2-star. That's just what I'm going with. Sipid Queen. All right, we got our rare buff, guys. We got a rare buff for nature. Insectoid. Awesome. Burn, so obviously it can't be brought back. You know, we'll see why. At the start of your turn, if your deck is empty, move 1 Insectoid attack card from your discard pile to your hand. Now that's interesting, because now just kind of looking at this is obviously their rare buff for Insectoids, really heavy, and it looks like just from the way this card is designed and conceptualized. Obviously, you only want to run one of it, because you're going to hold on to it until the very late game, until they've wasted all their buff removal, until they've done that, and then you lay this, and it's like, hey, now I'm on the deck out phase. It basically makes it so you never have to discard a card or deck out, because you just keep laying one, because the way deck out works, if you guys don't know, if your deck is empty, one card has to leave your hand and go to the discard pile per turn. Otherwise, you have to discard a card or remove a buff or an item in play until you have nothing in play, then you lose. So this one essentially means that you never can win or lose by mill or anything like that. Like, you cannot lose because you move a card back and then you can just lay that attack card. And that's your one card for the turn, so you never get to that deck out phase, essentially. You win the extreme long game. You outlast anybody and everybody. Like, just because you lay one attack a turn, just one attack, as long as it doesn't have burn. So, I mean, I think for that conceptualized, just having this one, I think if mill becomes more predominant, like it has been in the app, a lot of people don't like the mill archetype, but it is a very, very strong archetype. Just having one of these in a insect deck, or just, I mean, even if you only run one insect attack, and this card to, like, tech to beat the mill, that's amazing. Like, that just means that, hey, you're playing mill. Cool, you're never going to beat me. I'm always going to get value out of that, unless, of course, they somehow mill this card, and then you're like, well, that was dumb. Maybe I should tech 2 just so they don't mill it. But so from what I'm seeing, this game is obviously for the late game, extreme late game, which means that insect decks are going to want to play that attrition late game, really grind out those 45-minute matches that everyone so loves, right? But that also leads me to think that, like, this archetype is never going to make it in tournaments, because tournaments, there's a time limit. And if you are consistently waiting until you deck out to get better value out of this card, it's never going to see actual tournament play. It's maybe just going to see casual and ladder play. I mean, I really, really like the concept of this card. I think it's really great. It has its own place in its deck, but it is never going to see tournament play. Probably never going to see draft play, because draft is also considered tournament where everything is timed. And having this card basically make all of your games want to be 30 or 40 minutes last to get value out of this card, it's just not a good conceptual card for any competitive play. It's for those games where you play with your friends and they don't care if the games last an hour just to have fun. That's what I see this card as. I'm gonna give it it's like a 1.5 rating. It's a good card for having fun with. Terrible card if you want to be competitive, if you want to build a really strong deck to take to PAX East, to take to Gen Con, to take any tournaments. You're never going to play this card. You're never going to get past the first game if all of your games are continuously lasting that long just to get value out of this. Because it's not even like, hey, at the start of your, like if it was like obviously breaking the meta, making this whole thing go crazy, at the start of your turn, move one insectoid attack back. That would be nuts. That would be extreme value. You would run 3 of these. Your opponent would have to remove them every single time. Like that card would be broken, and that would make insectoid is extremely strong. So that's why I think they went with this, where if your deck is empty and all that stuff. But then again, maybe green just really wants to draw really quick to get their hand, like all the insectoid stuff in their hand and play that game. But I have yet to see a deck that, other than like Granite, that just continuously draws and plays their game as soon as their deck empty. Maybe we'll see Nature do that. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a fun Nature thing where they play a lot of the more Granite style where you want to get your deck empty to do some crazy stuff. But we'll see. Until then, this card is not going to see play. As amazing as it looks, as amazing as it sounds, you're never going to see this card in an actual competitive style because it relies on your games taking 45 minutes, and no one wants to do that in competitive. All right, we have Sipid Spawner, Soul Insectoid, Defend. Awesome. I love the families. All heroes discard a card or discard a number of cards from the top of their deck equal to the number of element icons on top of their discard pile. In order, icon counts as 1. Okay, so what it sounds like to me is, I mean, maybe this is a way, going back to Sipid Queen, maybe this is what you do to kind of really thin your deck out. Maybe you don't care about your stuff going to the discard pile. Maybe as long as you have Sipid Queen in your hand, you lay a combo that has all 3 alignments, and then you lay Sipid Spawner, and you just mill yourself for 3. Maybe that's how the insect archetype is going to go, which is a very strange archetype. It reminds me of, if you guys ever play Magic the Gathering, the Golgari set, where you almost want to like just have your discard pile in your graveyard and utilize graveyard effects. Maybe that's what insects are actually going to do. Maybe that's their archetype, and that could be really fun to explore for me. But otherwise, it looks like it's only one of those cards where it looks like it's going to be fitting in a mill deck. It looks like it's going to try and want to make your opponent mill after they lay a combo. But at the same time, and you sit there thinking about how just the past insectoid card works, maybe this is better to mill yourself with than actually try to mill your opponent with it. Like maybe that's how this card was like inadvertently designed to work. And in that case, you want to run like 3 of these, just so you can continuously mill your deck and only get to the value cards and get those really late game cards going as they're in your discard pile to bring them back. Maybe that's actually how Insectoid works, and I would love to explore that archetype. I would love to see the Insectiles like, no, you don't play with your deck, you play with your graveyard. So the more cards in your graveyard, the better your game is going to be. If that's the case, I love that concept. That is so cool! It's like Undead, but bugs. If that's the case, maybe this card's a 4-star card. Maybe it's used and designed to actually mill yourself. In which case, it doesn't require you waiting on your opponent to lay combos. It requires you to lay your combos, so that you can do stuff like that. With all of Nature's buff restarting stuff, you can actually line it up so it's like, hey, I play a combo and then I restart my buffs so they don't go on the discard pile, so I can wait to draw this card, or just play it right afterwards and make sure that nothing goes wrong unless they have buff removal. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. Until I know, I'm going to flip-flop my answers here. If Insect does go that route, where this is used as a more mill yourself mechanic, this is going to be a 4-star card. If it is not, this is a 1-star card. Because a lot of the good combos out that I've just been seeing, I mean, yes, there are a lot of good combos now that costs all 3 of their alignments, so it is going to mill them for 3. But I really don't think Nature is ever going to want to play the mill game. I don't think it's even going to want to see any type of mill. So that's why it's like, it's a 1-star right now until the insect archetype gets flushed out. And if this does, and I'm calling it right now, I'm calling it, guys. You can quote me on this video, put a star on it, be like, hey, Razor Greshu at 33 minutes and 3 seconds said this, and it turned out it was right, and he's amazing at calling the archetype without looking at the cards. It's awesome. It's going to be a 4-star card then, if that's how the insect archetype is going to work. Just to kind of help mill yourself faster to get to that end game. And then if that's the case, then maybe this becomes a tournament style deck where your games, where you get to deck out in like 5 minutes if you're playing really efficiently. That could be awesome. I would love to see that. But yeah, until then, it's a 1-star card because I don't know how it's going to work. and green is never going to want to see mill. No one's ever going to want to see mill in tournaments. Kind of how Sipid Queen was. It's not going to see play unless I'm right. All right, next card. Citadel Musician. All right, we got 4 corners each of one. Increased damage and healing done by 1. Essentially, this is just, hey, you have power 1. Could just be saying that, especially since they rewrote the new power rule. So it's like you have power 1 for the next 4 turns. That could be pretty cool. I mean, it all depends. This, like, for the next 3 turns, your insect swarms maybe just poke for 2. Your attack cards deal 1 more. Your Stumpdrift Shamans heal for 2, then 3, then 5. With all of the kind of cyclical damage from buffs and all that stuff for nature, this card might actually not be that bad. It reminds me of Alchemy Lab from the tech card, the tech alignment, way back in, I think Awakening is when it came out, where you got power 1 for like 2 or 3 turns, but that card was never used because of how big burst potential tech was. It didn't need the power to really increase it. Nature, it does. With the way Nature's been playing with the consistent small amounts of micro damage that they do, this actually could be pretty good. I mean, I'm going to give this a 3-star rating. It's a solid right down the middle card. You wouldn't be bothered with it in a draft to just get that minor increase. Even for like 3 turns, when obviously it's difficult to use it on the first turn unless you have a card to play with it on that turn. With all the continuous damaging buffs they have, or continuous healing buffs even too, that they have, just getting an increase on all of those makes this a pretty good card for nature, a really good card. And I mean, one of their biggest combo buffs literally just said you have power 1, and that was ran so much just because of the potential increase in damage that you got. Sorry guys, I just ate a little while ago. I have some little, don't mind me, a little, but I mean, this is a solid card for nature. I mean, maybe you're only going to see like 1 of it just for that potential, maybe early mid-game increased push to make your opponent kind of be on the defensive side. Like, oh, he's really ramping up. I was fine, you know, taking 1 or 2 damage, but now that damage has increased across 5 or 6 cards, and you're like, wow, what just happened? So, I mean, this card is a solid card that nature preemptively did need, making one of their strongest combos just be an action card for 4 turns. That's awesome. That is really cool, and I'm happy they made this card for it. I mean, it's also Soul Alignment. Soul is one of their best tech stuff. It runs the buff removal, it runs the restart stuff. So I mean, even splashing in Soul to put this card in another deck that does a lot of cyclical stuff like that could be really fun just to try. I mean, it's one of those cards that you kind of have to feel how it's going to run in the deck. But like I said, you're probably going to have more than 1 of it, because if you have multiple stuff, you're only gaining power on the stuff that doesn't increase. It just like it doesn't work well together. It's one of those that you want to lay once, get that fun push for 2 or 3 turns, and call it good. So like a 3-star card, solid. It's just good. All right, Duskbloom Burrower. We got a beast, or we got an insect animal attack card. 4 damage, increase dice by 4 if the recipient's deck is empty. All right, guys. Remember back when I said it'd be fun to mill yourself? Maybe Nature Insect is trying to actually mill your opponent too. Why? Like, why are they doing that? Maybe like this card. This card I see is being really good used against Granite and almost no one else, because no one else is going to have their deck empty by the time the game is over, unless like Insect starts really grinding heavy into the mill your opponent, all of this stuff to make them mill. You rarely ever see games in competitive style, even in the app, without them playing mill. And even if you are playing against mill, your deck is going to be emptier before theirs. So getting that extra 4 damage is almost never going to happen. So if you just look at it as an Insectoid card that does 4 damage, cool. Maybe like this is the one of that you run if you're trying to make Sipid Queen work, and you just keep laying this, and then as soon as you're both at deck empty, then you start doing 8 and just really push home that stuff, because it doesn't have burn, can be brought back, all that stuff. But if they're really trying to push home your recipient's deck is empty, that's where I think this one does not work. I would have loved to see this be like the kind of what the other nature. I'm trying to think of what the card is. It's like Gnarler, where it's 4 damage, but if your opponent shares the same alignment, it boosts up to 7. I would have loved to see a card like this if they were more along the lines of trying to go with what I thought they were. Crossing my fingers, they're still trying to do that. Where it's like 3 damage, but if your deck is empty, increase it by 4. So like it's a decent card for like early, mid, even late game, but like as soon as it's extreme late, if you're trying to really go that archetype, then this is a 7 damage card that Sipit Queen just breaks, that just makes it so good. Where then you're only going to want one of it anyway, because this is the one card that you just want to keep bringing back with Sipit Queen. So even make it like a 3 and increase by 3, that would have been really fun to see. But I don't think this card is going to really see play. It's fun of what it's trying to do. I really like the new insect stuff where it's like, hey, really dwindle down your decks before you really get to do anything. But it's just, that is way too slow of an archetype, at least from what it has been in the past. Maybe these new cards, maybe I haven't seen. Symbiotic Gnarler, thank you, White Wolf. But yeah, unless as we go through this, we see a lot more Insectoid cards that really go along the lines with you and your opponent both milling at the same time, doing stuff like that, to get that mill factor in there really good so that you can use the deck empty check, so you can use it to your advantage. I don't see this card being played. If only probably a 1-of, because you're never going to want to run 3. That is just bad for 3. And it's, if you do rely on bringing stuff back from the graveyard, as long as it's in your graveyard, you can keep bringing it back and getting value out of that. So why only need more than 1 is my essential to it. But unless that archetype gets fleshed out, it's probably going to be a 1-of compared to a lot of other things in nature that it does. I mean, maybe it's like a 1.5. Maybe it's a 1.5, because they actually finally have a good attack card. They're just 4 damage. Completely fine. Yeah, I don't think Nature got one of the base 5 attack damage cards. If I'm almost like, I want to say they did, but I really can't think of the name. I think all their damage mostly came from like buffs, way back when, unless it was like their buff removal, which was 3 damage attack. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm missing that one basic card that was just 5 damage from Nature, but I never saw it. Yeah, yeah, Grimjaw. It's not going to see play, like I said, unless that archetype gets fleshed out, that I'm praying actually happens. This card isn't going to see play. It's just not good. 1.5 just because it's 4 damage instead of 3. And that's what it is. Wrong way. Alright, we have Egg Chamber, XXX2. Damage to your target, move up to 2 Insectoid cards from your deck to your hand. Once again, it's a location, so we finally have some location in nature. If you're playing Insectoid cards, you have to basically wait 3 turns after laying it to draw 2 cards. Mind you, the damage is 2. Cool, I waited 3 turns to do 2 damage to you. I could have had Insect Swarm out there and it would have done 1/1/1 each turn. If you're laying a really Insectoid deck, cool, you get to draw 2 at the very end. Maybe green doesn't have a whole lot of card draw outside of like Root Singer and stuff like that. It is 2 specific cards, so that fetch thing might be decent. Yes, you can restart this buff, so it has a potential buff removal. I'm trying to think of all the positives for this card, but I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, maybe Egg Chamber, the way the deck designers were going, was like, hey, you use Egg Chamber early on to find your Sipit Queen so it doesn't get milled. Maybe that's the one you want to really look for with this card, and then you really play the late game. Like, I'm trying to think of how this card will be working, but it just I don't see it. I don't see this card being played. Yes, it's good in insects. I'm not saying it's a bad card. It's good in an insect deck, because it's not really that threatening to be removed. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I get to draw 2 Insectoid cards that you choose. Correct. Yes. But it's like you have to wait those 3 turns. I don't know what I'm mostly trying to judge this because I haven't seen what the Insectoid archetype is going to be fleshed out in. I don't know how their game plan is all going to roll out. So I mean, like, it's really hard to judge this card, obviously, until I find that archetype. At the end of the day, I really wish this would have been on the 3rd corner instead of the 4th one, because I feel like you're just waiting too long. Yes, it is. It's card draw, which is, like I said, one of the best things in the game. But I just don't feel that it's powerful enough to be even rated an uncommon card. But like, I don't know how well the insect archetype is going to do. I don't know how well it's going to do if all these cards that I'm seeing is playing that late game. You're never going to see Insectoids in like competitive outside of your friends playing it. So I don't even know if this card is going to be that good. It's barely going to see draft because I don't know how many Insectoid cards there are. So I can't really, like, I want to give it a 2. I want to give it a 2-star rating. On like with an asterisk, with possible improvement on how the Insectoid stuff works. But I'm just like, yes, it is card fetch for 2 specific Insectoid cards. If you're running an Insectoid deck, awesome. You're probably going to only want to run like 1 of this card. maybe 2, but I feel like green just has a lot more efficient stuff that it could be doing. Even just playing Root Singer draws you 2 cards. You can restart that buff with the Draga, with the Blueback Draga. You can do a whole bunch of other things than waiting 3 turns to lurk for 2 specific ones. That's all I'm saying. Like, we'll see how the Insect archetype flushes out. We'll see if it's actually just a really good card, and I'm completely being biased by this by not knowing anything about the family set. But I'm going to give it a 2-star rating right now, with an asterisk that really hoping I'm right about this Insect and how it's going to flush out. I'm crossing my fingers I'm correct. Let's go on to the next one, guys. Feasting Skeetos. All right, we got an animal insect attack. 4 damage. If the recipient has 7 or more cards in their hand, you heal for 3. Once again, an insect card that is 4 attack or 4 damage. Cool. A very conditional thing for a bonus to it. Okay, I'm seeing where they're going with this. This feels like a little counterproductive. Yes, 4 damage is decent. It's good. It's on an attack card. Cool. Maybe that's all you play it for. If the recipient ever has 7 cards in their hand, they're usually playing a more control-y archetype or long style. So the 3 healing, you really kind of want it to be one of those. If they have like less than 3 cards in their hand, you heal for 3, because those kind of archetypes are where you need the healing, where you need that little burst healing against the aggro archetypes. A lot of people nowadays barely have 7 cards in their hand because they're always playing around Creeble Jester and the new Stampeding unalignment card that has, like, if you have 8, shuffle them back in and move 5. So, like, people rarely nowadays ever have 7 or more cards in their hand unless they're playing a very controlling archetype or playing a really heavy card draw. I'm just reading this as a 4 damage card, and then in certain places it gives you a minor heal. So, I mean, just because it's 4 damage, I'm going to give it a 2-star rating. Once again, it's an insectoid attack. It's an insectoid attack, mind you, which is really cool that green's getting a lot more attack, a lot more aggressive style. But it's another insectoid that basically, to me, just reads 4 damage. It just reads 4 damage. That's most likely all you're going to play it for. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe it changes. I don't know. But I feel like you're very rarely going to get that healing off of it, because so many people are playing around certain cards now where they're like, okay, I have like 6 cards in my hand. I'll play 1, and they're never going to have more than 6 or 5, because when you have that many cards, you can actually have a good turn. You're not waiting for certain things. Alright, so that's my review. 2-star on this one. Let's keep going. Feral Spirit. We got 3 corners where it's not dormant, so just whatever it does. It's an elemental. Awesome. I love elementals. For buff, instead of discarding, store beast cards under this card. When this expires, deal 6 damage to your target. Increase this by the number of stored cards. This card cannot be returned. This card looks like it's going to be, I want to say, incredible. Lately we've been seeing, like I said, a lot of the nature alignment has been wanting to restart your buffs. Make sure you get a lot of good value out of this one. Obviously, you can restart this one. It doesn't have burn, so you can even bring it back with some cool things. That could be really fun. We'll see how the beast archetype works, where maybe you actually want to run like 1 or 2 of these in a deck, have all your beast buffs expire to get stored into this one, and have one really good turn. Mind you, it's 3 buffs, and then it does 6 damage at least. At minimum, it's just 6 damage. It's a small Stampeding Tusker that just goes to the graveyard and has elemental synergy, so you can do stuff like that. So I mean, it is a pretty threatening card that just increases based on your beast cards. This could be one of those cards that's just a really good final push for beasts, where like you line this up so that like on the first turn, like it rotates out, where when it rotates the second corner, you get like 2 beast buffs under there. Third one, you get maybe 1 or 2 more or whatever, and that like when those expire, they go under this one, because the way buffs work, they go in the line down the order of the row, and then they all get sorted, and then this actually does this damage. So I mean, this could be that really final good push for just like 10 damage to an opponent with beasts, and then you just go ham with like some attack cards. Maybe that's where you run the 4 damage insect cards. You just boom boom at like 18 damage in 1 turn after all of your beast buffs expired from doing their damage, because that's what beasts essentially going to want to do. I think this is a really good card. So this is a card that demands removal, in my opinion. It's one of those cards where like you lay it, and it could be that game finishing card that maybe the beast archetype needs, or maybe just nature needs itself. But yeah, there are, like what we'll say, there's a lot of ways to abuse this in nature. Like I said, just because they can restart their buffs. Maybe you just restart this one, have it hit for a lot, and then restart it, get more beast cards or beast buffs that you didn't expire, and have this just hit for another like 16. It's that really good, really game-winning card that Nature needed outside of Vine Lash, outside of all this other stuff they did. Stuff like Draga can restart and then get caught by the Feral Spirit. Exactly. Draga with this, you can get it, restart it twice, have Draga go under the Feral Spirit to increase the damage on its third one. Like, really good synergies like that. Mind you, like I said, it is just 6. 6 is by far a very good stat line for the final corner in just anything. 6 damage on a third corner is really good. Increasing that with other stuff, mind you, can't be returned, so it has to be removed. This is like a 5-star card, in my opinion. For Nature alone, just 6 damage is really good, guys. Like, it's not where it's 4, it needs to be increased, or anything like that. It's 6. Can be restarted. Stores all the beast buffs that you're just being very aggressive by faster rotating them with all this other stuff. I think it's gonna see a lot of play. It's gonna be the all-star card in beast decks. I'm trying to contemplate whether or not you run 2 of them, because a lot of beast stuff synergies like that. You know, you bring stuff with beast cards from your deck. Maybe bring beast cards back from your discard pile. All this stuff really works for beasts. I don't know how the elemental one works, so maybe it's like one of those where you bait out all their buff removal with your beast buffs, and then you lay Feral Spirit and have that be your big turn killer, where obviously they can't remove it anymore and they can't return it, so it's just this thing is going to kill them. That's why I'm seeing this card, but it is like a 5-star card. I think this is going to be a very, very dominant card in the beast archetype, where your opponent, once they see it, they either go, well, I should not have used all my buff removal on there, like Corvid Conspirators or all this other stuff to remove their pressuring cards. I should have waited until I was like, I'm going to die because this is going to kill me in 2 turns. That's where I see this card. It's going to be a very dominant pressure in Nature alone. 5-star around. This is a greatly designed card. White Wolf says, and there's a beast card you will see later that does 2 and restarts 1 buff. Oh, I can't wait to see that. Alright. Oh, that's so stupid. It's a beast card, so it gets stored under. Oh my god. Yeah, the Feral Spirit. 5-star. It's such a good buff. So much utilization, and if these cards are correct, and it's going with just like, hey, especially if it's just restart 1 buff. Awesome. All right, next card we have. Let's go. Let's move along, shall we? We have Forest XX. Nothing. Heal equal to the number of cards in your enemy's hand. Okay. This one. I don't know. Maybe this could be fun in the more insect style archetype. I know Ashwood Diva was a card that was like no one ever ran that because they don't want to give their opponents cards or anything like that. But it's like if you have this out for 2 turns, your opponent's just going to lay everything in their hand so you don't get a good heal, and the stuff they're going to lay is going to put pressure on you, deal damage. So like this card, it's trying to do what I think it's Infested Veg is like the same exact card, but it deals damage to your opponent based on how many cards are in their hand. And that card never saw play. It never saw play, even though there were so many deck archetypes that were like, hey, I have like 8 cards in my hand, and then you lay that card and you're like, all right, I'll just start laying cards the next 2 turns so it does nothing to me. Like that kind of thing, where it's so easy to play around. You have to play it at the specific time. Maybe like even if your opponent has no cards in their hand, so they have to draw 2, and then maybe they don't draw anything and they draw another 2, and you heal for 4. Cool. It becomes a worse Stump Drift Shaman at that point. Like this is just it's a 1-star card. Yes, it's an elemental, so it can be utilized in that family, which I think is great. But it's not gonna be seen play, and I hate to see that because I would have loved to just play an extreme gimmick where it's like, hey, make your opponent draw all these cards and they can't empty them fast enough, and then you like get big heals with Infected Veg and run Invigorating Stink Cap and all that stuff that utilizes your opponent's hand size. But at the same time, cool, I get like a minor heal and some damage, but I gave them like 6 cards that could just kill me. Like what were you thinking? Like, oh my god. So I think it's just a 1-star card. It's not going to see play, and it just isn't. It just is never going to see play. Obviously, I'll play it because I'll want to make a gimmick deck, but it's never going to see play. It's a card that is either way ahead of its time, or is just a card that like we need to make a filler for Forest. What if we do Infected Veg but for healing? Yeah, that card never saw play. It's fine. We'll just add that in and deck card. Cool. I don't know. That's just my opinion. All right, next one. Leaf Spine Hunter. We have Animal for Beast Attack. Awesome. 3 damage. Choose a family and reveal the top 2 cards of the recipient's deck. Discard any revealed cards of that family. The rest go back in the same order. Okay. Once again, looks like nature's trying to go more that mill route. In my opinion, I wish this was an insectoid. That way you could actually run it in the more insectoid archetype where you're trying to get both opponents where their deck is just gone and you can do some fun stuff. So I feel like the family's the one out of place here of what it's trying to do, because I feel like for beasts, you don't care about control. The way I've been seeing beasts before is just major aggression, major hit them heavy, hit them fast. And this is one of those things where like, yeah, we're gonna hit you, like we're all our beast of damage is going through. But I'm gonna also try and mill you slightly if you're running a family tile deck. So we'll just do that. But then we're gonna go back to doing the damage, and it's like, what? It doesn't feel like it's a beast card. It feels like it was meant to be an insectoid card, but they had way too many insectoid family cards, and they didn't have enough beasts, so they just decided to make this one a beast for some reason. I mean, it's made of wood, so even it could have been an elemental. Like, I don't know why they made it a beast and then made it designed out of wood. I don't know. I mean, it's a fine card. Could be fun to really make your opponent, like, especially if you know their buff removal is like, it's a beast type, or their buff removal is an elemental type, and you just really want to mill one of those, or make sure you try and get some of those. Or even you just want to look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck so you know what's coming up in the future. Maybe that's all you run one of for. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's all you need. But yeah, I feel like the family is what really turns me off on this card. I'm gonna say it's a 2-star card, most likely used for sideboard. If your family is playing a really family heavy deck, you splash one of this in there to try and mill them for 2. Maybe if you're running into, like, it has a really big weakness against. I know Crystal Leech is now a beast. I know Thunderslug is now a beast. Trying to think other. I think in Nature, Reckless Spirit is now an undead card. So maybe if you're like, now that all these buff removals have family, maybe running one of this in your deck is fine to make sure you, or at least attempt to hit a buff removal because of how many buffs are going to be in your deck, and you just don't want them to be removed. Maybe, I don't know, but I feel like it's going to get a 2-star rating just because it's a beast and not an insectoid for me. I really would have loved to see this be an insectoid card and really have them drive that archetype home where it's, you want both of you to just go into the graveyard as fast as possible, and then you utilize your graveyard while they can't. It's one of those things where I would have loved to see that more. 2-star just because it's not an insectoid. Come on, guys. Come on. All right, Lumbering Behemoth. 3 clunky corners, then to an 8. It's a beast card. Awesome for soul. Usually don't see a whole lot of soul outside of for beasts. Corners 1, 2, and 3. Rotate this 1 step forward when one of your buffs expires. Corner 4, damage to your target. Okay, I really like the concept for this. I really think it's cool where it's like, hey, you know, you could lay this card on a really fun turn where, like, 3 of your buffs expire, and then the next turn this just hits them for 8 as your stuff goes away. But the way Nature is the way it is, they utilize a lot of the restarting stuff with actions. Even Blueback Draga is a card is going to be used to restart your buffs. I don't really see you wanting your buffs to expire. And if you you have to play this early game, otherwise it's late game. I don't see what it's going to do, especially because if you need at least 3 buffs to rotate before it does 8 damage. I think the B card from the last set would be a better one than this because it had a lot more defense in Nature. This one is just, maybe this is one of those cards that you want to splash into another alignment because they don't restart their buffs as much. Maybe it was put in green to be a beast, to be fun, but it was actually meant to be splashed in with the soul card, something like that. Royal Bumbler, I think, is the card that I'm thinking of with the B. But it's just, I don't see this card. Maybe it's going to be good in draft because draft doesn't have a whole lot of the buff restart, so this is going to be fine in draft. It's going to be a really good card in draft, really threatening. But in like standard and all that stuff for this is just, it's the card doesn't fit the way Nature plays. It doesn't really feel like it's going to even have fun in a beast deck, at least a Nature one, where a lot of their stuff is going to be restarting their buffs to get value out of them. With Blueback Draga, with Old Oak, with some other stuff that they were saying there's another card coming up that's just restart one of your action buffs. So like you don't really want any of your cards to expire. It's just, that's my opinion. There was even a Nature buff last set. I'm sure the White Wolf will find the name for it, but it was like if a buff next to this one expires, you heal for 2 and draw a card. That card was never seen play in Nature because in Nature you either had continuous buffs out or you never wanted your buffs to expire. You always wanted them to keep restarting. That card was just never seen because it never got value. It's kind of the same thing with this. It runs off your buffs expiring, and yet Nature is inherently wanting you to make sure that your buffs never expire. So I just don't think this card is going to see play. I think it's like a 1-star card, maybe 1.5 because in Draft it's actually a threat. In Draft it's a potential threat where your buffs expire, then it is just 8 damage. Is it Resourceful Sipid? Is Resourceful Sipid the name of that B card? That's a... Oh, interesting. Did not know that. But anyway, let's go on to the next card. I'm going to give this like a 1.5 just because it's good in Draft. So Oakthorn Rider. Alright, we have Animal Attack, 3 damage, increase this by 1 for each buff of a different family you have in play. Okay, so I mean, right off the bat, no family. Even though it has an Insectoid, it has an Elemental in the picture, no family. Cool, I guess. 3 damage that could potentially maybe be like 5 or 6, depending on how your deck is all worked together. You said heal for 2. Oh, Resourceful Sipid. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Resourceful Sipid is the name of the buff that was never played because your buffs never expired next to it either. You just always restarted their stuff. Thank you, White Wolf. That's the card I was thinking of. But yeah, Oakthorn Rider. I mean, it's just I don't see this card being played, especially now in Kindred when everyone's probably going to start playing a lot of family-oriented stuff where maybe you have like 1, maybe 2 families, the support family to help the main one. Then this is only 5 damage, a conditional 5 damage. When you look at other cards like the Mantic Spitter from Dread, which is just 5 damage, Tarek's Mercenary from Tech, which was just 5 damage. It's more of that conditional 5 damage where it's 3, could be 4, could be 5. This card is only going to be seen in Draft just because it's a beast attack card that could do more, and when you're running a draft like that, you could have multiple colors with a bunch of families and have this potentially be good. I don't see this card being run and constructed. I'm going to just give this even a 1-star card, where even in Draft there's probably better cards to pick over this one. Yeah, it's a 1-star card. It doesn't fit anything, no family orient to it. It relies on other family cards to be out in play. It's just not a good card. It's not good. We've seen a lot of normal just beast or nature alignment cards now that have a baseline of 4 damage that have a conditional added onto it. That just 3 damage makes it even worse than that for me. I mean, I think there's even a Dread card that's like 4 damage that increases 1 per combo in your discard pile. That even had a base stat line of 4 damage at the very beginning to make it at least a decent card to play anytime. But yeah, I don't think this card is going to see play in almost anything at all. You can't fetch it back with any of the fun cards with the new Kindred set. It's just, meh. It feels very underwhelming, and it's only going to get a 1-star from me. So, sorry. Overlooked Defender. Alright, we got 3 clunky corners, 2, 2, and 2. Instead of discarding, store forest cards under this card. This does not rotate the card. Reduce damage received by rotation. Increase this by the number of cards stored under this card. Interesting. Now, this has its place. I feel like a lot of people are going to see this as a better Mossridge Defender, which in a lot of cases it will be, because it's obviously conditional damage prevention, where it stays on the board, whereas Mossridge, does the 3, 2, 2, but it's like all the damage prevention for those turns. Whereas this one, I mean, you could store all of your forest buffs, forest cards under there. A lot of the times, maybe you just want your forest cards in the discard pile so you can bring them back. So, like, if it gets stored, you can't do that, and maybe that's terrible. People could just get by it with, like, the poke damage, and then you could have 5 cards stored into there for, like, 7 damage prevention, but it will get ticked for 1 damage, and then it's just gone. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, with all the continuous healing that nature has, it's hard. God, this is a difficult one for me to value, because like I said, it has its places, it has its moments where it's good and it's really bad. I'm going to give this probably a 3-star. It's a solid card. Really good in draft, in my opinion. I think it's going to be really good for nature to have this in draft as a continuous damage prevention as opposed to Mossridge Defender, which they're both really good. They're both forest cards. Mossridge Defender will rotate, putting under this one, so Oaklook Defender could become a 3/3/3 afterwards. just because nature does rely on its consistent rotation buffs, you can restart this buff as well. I just it's torn for me with how much smaller micro damage they're doing now with all these cards, that some of these conditional buffs are getting a lot weaker than they were before. Um, but then again, I could be completely wrong. Maybe people are going to go heavy on the 5 and 6 damage, and this one is going to be just really good to prevent them from the buffs and everything from overwhelming them for the next 3 attacks as opposed to the next 3 turns. So yeah, it has its place. It has its ups and downs. I could probably see this being sideboarded in where you switch out this and Moss Ridge Defender depending on what deck you face in tournaments. That's where I'm seeing this card. It's a tie between Moss Ridge Defender and this of what one you play, and they're very situational cards where they're going to be flip-flopped a lot in nature decks, I think. I think that's pretty much all it's going to be used for, is replacing Moss Ridge Defender in certain game archetypes where you need that conditional damage as opposed to 3 continuous turns of damage. I mean, yeah, it's a worse Mountain Fort. I mean, it could potentially be a better Mountain Fort, especially because with how nature restarts their buffs, Grimjoust. That's why I'm saying you can restart this one after you get to that damage, but at the same time, it's like it is only for 3 turns. Meh. Mountain Fort was easy enough to get around with all the poke damage they did. Maybe this one's the same way too. Exactly, the White Wolf. It's a card that it's very situational. Like I said, I'm going to give it 3 stars because nature does need that. Maybe continuous damage as opposed to Moss Ridge Defender and their small micro heals where they need to sit behind a wall with Stumpdrift Shaman healing them microly because they don't have a lot of really big burst heal outside of Spore Feeder. And this is a continuous buff for Spore Feeder to rely on. So like that's where I'm getting torn in this. It's a 3-star card, it's a solid card, but because it's literally a 50-50 toss-up between one of the cards that's already being used a lot and this one, it doesn't fully replace it. It just like 50-50 replaces it. So that's why I'm giving it like a solid 3-star, right in the middle. That's what I'm giving it. All right, we have. It wasn't even a family oriented. No, it wasn't even like a family elemental or anything like that. Is Moss Ridge Defender an elemental now, or is it still just nothing? I want to say it's still nothing if this one isn't anything because they're both tree warriors. So if Moss Ridge Defender is elemental, this one definitely should have been an elemental. All right, Spineback Stockjaw. I think this is the one you were talking about. Yeah, 2 damage, restart one of your action buffs. And it's a beast card. Oh my god. Why would they give something like this a beast? Did they give Old Oak an elemental or a family too? Because if they did, that's awesome. That's awesome that they gave an Old Oak to a family. But Spineback Stockjaw, 2 damage, restart one of your action buffs. It's a beast card. Mind you, way back at the beginning, Ashwood Nurturer, 2 healing, move a beast card from your deck to your hand. Why would you not search for this when you have all the good beast buffs out and then just restart one of your beast buffs? They're both from different families, so you don't even need a superiority in that element. This card is going to be amazing, even just in nature alone. This card is I think this is a 5-star card. It's going to be amazing in drafts because it's restart your action buffs in draft. There aren't a lot of buff removals, so this is going to be amazing value out of it. It's 2 damage. And in the beast archetype, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be extremely good, especially if it's like, hey, I think Beastcaller was Beastcaller was beast buffs expire. But I'm sure there's cards that like, hey, bring a beast card back from your discard pile, do this stuff. Just because it belongs to a family makes this so much better. Old Oak is a location card, really. Really? I mean, it's a tree, so it's very permanent. I guess that makes sense. But I didn't think location for Old Oak. That seems really weird. But it is what it is. Monster still has no family. Okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense then. But no, Spineback Stockjaw it's a 5-star card. It's an uncommon, so everyone's going to have a dime a dozen of these, which means they're going to see them a lot. It's not like, oh, I need $10 to buy this card to make a really good nature deck. No. This card's like 50 cents. It's going to be used in almost every nature deck out there, especially because Old Oak is a rare and that one's like $10, and not a lot of people have access to that. Spineback Stockjaw is an amazing replacement, especially if you really want one buff to keep on the board, like, oh, I don't know, the Feral Spirit. You just keep rotating Feral Spirit and have all your other beast buffs expire to make this one just really keep hitting home. This is an amazing card, and it's really good in the beast archetype for them continuously pressuring damage as opposed to their buffs continuously expiring, which is what nature does not want to do. Nature does not want their stuff to expire. It wants it to be out on the board. It wants to just wreak havoc on you, and that's what this one card allows you to do, is just continuously wreak havoc, and it's awesome. I think this is a great card. 2 damage, I would run this if it just literally said, well, no, I probably wouldn't because Old Oak would be better. 2 damage, restart one of your action buffs, beast card, phenomenal. Mwah, love it. Love this card. Alright, next one we have Spineback Forager. Animal, beast, burn. So it can't be caught by Feral Spirit. Fine. 2 damage to all other heroes. Oh, multiplayer, please put multiplayer in the game. I cannot wait to build decks like that. Choose a family you have in play. All heroes move 1 card of that family to their discard pile to their hand. What? Oh my god, guys, this is the card I was talking about. This is the card that they needed. The beast card that's like, hey, 2 damage to you. I choose beast. Let's all return a beast card from our discard pile to our hand. What? I just returned oh, whoop, sorry guys. I just returned the Spineback Stockjaw to restart my cards. What? No, that is so ridiculous. That is so good. I mean, even outside of the beast cards, this card is just a solid card to put in any deck that runs family. Especially if you're like splashing into something where it's a very one alignment oriented card. Like if you're only running insects in a nature deck, you say insect, and not a lot of people are going to have insect. If you're playing Dread and you splash this in and you say undead, not a lot of people are going to have undead. Old Oak and Bloomback are way better than Stockjaw. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I can see that. But I think Stockjaw or Spineback Stockjaw is going to have its place. I think both of them are going to have its place. You're going to want to run both of them in a beast deck. You're going to want to run both. I mean, Blueback, obviously you get to restart it twice, stays out there, conditional, stuff like that, but I mean, they're not going to expect Stickjaw, as opposed to where Bloomback, they can remove it, or they can see what you're going to do it in the future. So, that's my thought on it, too. They're both 5-star cards. They're both cards that are going to see continuous play. So, but Spinebark Forager it's a 5-star card. This is an amazing card for just the Kindred set as a whole. Just it's going to be an amazing card for any deck that's running family-oriented stuff that you want to splash for some reason animal into it. It's a beast card. Obviously, it has burn, so you can't return anything like that. But like you can fetch for this card. You can fetch for this card because it's a beast card, and then use it to return your family cards if you're running it in that beast archetype deck. This is such a good card. Just the fact that it doesn't say like all heroes move 1 beast. It's like one that you control, not one that they have in common, like or something like that. It's the one that you control, and then if they happen to share that family with you, then they get benefit from it. Otherwise, it's just you, and it's multiplayer damage. Like it's not even like 2 damage to your target, 1 damage to everyone else. It's just 2 multiplayer damage. This is a 5-star card. I cannot wait to play this card. This is almost going to be like a 3 of include in a lot of decks just to get that value out of it. It's going to be so good, so good. I cannot wait to see what people like. I want to see people splash this into their family archetype decks just to throw people off and be like, wow, I didn't think you were going to return more undead cards or stuff like that. Like, that's awesome. I love this card. This is going to be great. All right, Spirit of Balance. Soul Undead. Defend. Okay. Apply the effect of another hero's last discarded card if it's an action card, or defend card, as if played it against them if it's an attack. Treat it as an attack or defend as applicable. This is a very conditional card. Like very conditional. If your opponent's buffs rotate and they don't do anything, then you can't really use this card at all. If it's an attack card, then you're being pressured and you might want to be more defensive. If they laid a defend card and you're already at like full health, you don't really want to use this on a defend card. And if they play a combo, you can't even do anything with it because it has to be an action card. Oh man, this card is... It's really weird of how this one could be used. Yes, it's undead, so maybe it's meant to, once again, be used outside of the nature set, be splashed in with soul and all that other stuff, so maybe utilized in a more dread style for some reason. I don't know. But this one, like, it's so conditional and so unsituational where, like I was saying, if they defend because you've been applying pressure to them, and because that you don't need to defend, it's a dead card. But if they've been continuously attacking you, which means that you have to start playing on the more defensive side, playing this as an attack when you really want it to be able to heal you, I don't know. I don't think this card is unfortunately going to see a whole lot of play. Yes, it's undead. No, it doesn't have burn, so it can have all that fun with the family stuff. But, like, I don't know. I don't think, compared to a lot of the other cards that I've seen come out of nature so far, the ones that I have looked at, this one is ever going to find a place in nature right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people run Soul of War and the Spineback Forager to return undead cards and utilize this as in a really unique, really fun way. But yeah, this is one of those cards where it's only going to be teched in against a specific deck that may be running the meta like mad, and it utilizes like really heavy attack cards that do ridiculous stuff, and you just utilize this to make them like hurt because they played a certain card. Like I don't know, but yeah, it's like a I don't even think it's going to be good in draft. Honestly, I'm just I hate to say it. I think this is like a 1-star card and it's a rare card. But yeah, it's so situational that I don't think it's going to have a spot compared to just you want your deck to do a solid thing. It's more of like this card relies on what your opponent's doing, and you don't care what your opponent's doing most of the time unless you're like, okay, I need to defend because he's attacking me. That's pretty much the basis of it. On an off tangent from a developer side of me, I would love to see a card like this where it's like if your opponent's last card is an attack, you heal for 4. If it's a defend card, you can like attack for 4. So like it's an attack or it's like it's a defend card that's situational based on that. Like that would have been an amazing rare card for this set. That's just a developer standpoint of mine, just looking at this card, how they were trying to work it. It's just it. I would have loved to see something like that where it counteracts what your opponent's doing to actually be a viable card, as opposed to relying on what your opponent's doing for you to then do the same exact thing when maybe you want to do the exact opposite thing. That's all I'm saying. That it's a 1-star card in my opinion because I don't think it's going to be played compared to almost every card that I've seen so far. Supply Carrier, Soul Beast Defend card. Awesome. 2 healing, move up to 2 item cards from your deck to your hand. Alright guys, this card is amazing. Incredibly amazing. It's a beast card, so once again, it can be fetched from your deck. Cool. Maybe you're playing a deck that runs a lot of items, and you play that the healing card that moves a beast card to your hand. Move this one to your hand. Then you can move 2 items cards to your hand. So like in the same turn, you essentially just drew 3 cards out of your deck, which thinned your deck out tremendously, and you got the items that you've been like massively searching for. It's also a beast card and a nature card, which means it doesn't have to take up a Tantosian blacksmith spot. It puts 2 of them in your hand, not just 1. Yes, you have to spend the next turn to play that card and whatnot, so where Tantosian is better to search for 1 specific item, put it into play, get an initial action. We've all discussed that's a 6-star card. It's $15. It's well worth the money. But this one is just, it's going to be a really good card in this new set, with how many new items are coming out. With all of them having like really just fun effects that you want to be able to play, where it's not like a game-ending item, but just an item that you could be running a lot of the green items in this deck where you don't necessarily need it to lay cards in your deck. You just need it for the benefit of what the item does. I think it's going to see like a lot of play. It's going to be like maybe a 4-star in constructed, a 5-star in draft with how many items you've been pulling from packs and sharing like that. I think it's just a solid card. Beast card, so it actually fits a family, does really good value out of it. It's so much value in one card. This is an amazing card, and it's gonna see a lot of play. It's even Soul, which is their tech-oriented stuff, which means that if people run the Soul items, they can splash this in, which doesn't seems very counterproductive because you want the Soul item to then use this card to search for items. So maybe you don't do that. Maybe it's just utilized for the green archetype to search for weapons and do that fun stuff with it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that archetype comes out. We'll see what green really wants to do. But yeah, this card is going to be really fun. It's going to be used in a lot of fun ways to just really get those items out that are a lot valuable to use in these certain types of decks. I think it's a 4-star card, 5-star in draft, just to have fun with items that can't be removed in draft most likely. But yeah, with all the new items, this card's power level just skyrocketed because of how fun the new items are going to be. In my opinion, I love the new items. They're all amazing. Obviously, well, not all of them. I've given some pretty bad ratings, but a good half of them are really good. So this card is really good. It's going to see a lot of play. All right, we have a Chimchu card. What? Chimchu in nature? No way. All right, Forest. Attack card. 1 damage. Remove 1 undead buff from your recipient. You draw 1 card. Okay. So this is very tech-oriented, very much a sideboard card. 1 damage, remove 1 undead buff from your recipient, draw 1 card. We did look at a lot of the undead buffs. We did look and see like how strong they are. But then again, the undead archetype from what we just reviewed yesterday is all about bringing them back from the discard pile. So I feel like removing 1 undead buff is almost not that valuable if they're just going to continuously bring it back from the graveyard. So like looking at that, just because that's the family it targets, you're mostly going to play this card for 1 damage, you draw 1 card. And if that's the case, it seems like it wants to be an Astro card, but it's put into nature, which is why it's a Chimchu, obviously. So yeah, it's like a very limited tech card. It's only going to see sideboard play. I don't think it's ever going to see main play. It could be fun in draft. Maybe there's a lot more undead buffs out there that I have not been seeing, that have been splashed into other colors. But it just, I mean, you can't even use this in a counter deck against Soul of War because the damage comes first, which means they'll draw 1 card out of Soul of War, and then you remove Soul of War because it is an undead buff, and then you draw a card. So it's like you and your opponent both draw a card with this 1 card, which is like a worse Ashwood Diva. Yeah, I don't think this card is going to see play. I kind of wish it would have targeted another family other than undead, because I feel like I said, the undead is just from what I've seen so far, it's very limited to 1 color, whereas the Poison Umbron card that we saw yesterday targeted Beast, which was a very universal one. Maybe if this like targeted an Elemental, that would be really good. But undead, I think this is like a 1-star card. Not going to see a whole lot of play, maybe not even in draft, as opposed, maybe it's just like you need it for cycling through your deck in draft. Maybe you play it then. But it's the undead family that really kills me on this card, because of how limited that I've seen the undead. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's undead throughout all of them that are really good buffs that like you need this in there to target 1 specific buff in a really good deck, in which case it is that tech card you put in to counter that 1 deck, but then it's not played against the other 10 or 20 decks that come out. So it's a 1-star card. You're going to see it once in a blue moon, and even in draft, all it is the cycle. 1 damage, draw 1 card, where you maybe get a cool benefit out of it. I don't know. Buff removal is heavy in draft, but this is very specific buff removal, and I don't think this is going to be played a whole lot outside of draft. Maybe not even in draft. So we'll see. But yeah, 1-star for me. Sorry. The 1 Chimchu in nature that I've seen, and I'm like, this is horrible. This is not a good design card because of the undead family. I just really wish the family would have been chosen differently. That's all. All right, we have 2x4 Beast buff, damage to your target. This card, I think, is going to be really good. It doesn't necessarily replace. Wow. I literally said the name of the card like 5-10 minutes ago. The X322 animal buff. Cannot think of the name for the life of me, but it came out in the Awakening set. It was a really good standard for just aggressive for nature style. Vicious Scalefang, I think, is actually going to be slightly better than it. Mind you, it does rotate out quicker, which could be better if you want them to go under Feral Spirit. You can't wait the whole 4 turns. But the fact that it's just, you get instant effect when it comes out, which is kind of why a lot of people ran Putrid Infestation, where it came out and did 3 damage, and then the next few turns it was just 1/1/1, which you don't care about. But laying it for 3 was what impacted it so well. This one, like, immediately coming into play and dealing 2 damage, and then in 2 turns deals 4. Corvid Conspiracy, thank you, Corvid Conspiracy. I mean, if you look at this card, it's a faster, more effective card than Celestian Warrior. Celestian Warrior is X3X4, where this is just 2X4. So, like, yeah, you lose out on 1 damage, but the fact that it goes off quicker means that the 1 damage is 1 turn late. Like, this card, I think, is going to see a lot of play. It's going to see a lot of play just in draft because it's a really good, efficient 6 damage card. It's a beast card that you can utilize in a very aggressive style beast deck. I mean, if you think about it, like, if you lay it turn, it does 2 damage when it comes out, goes into the 4, you restart it, so it goes back to its first corner, which means then it does 2 more after it's restarted. So, like, that's 6 damage every time you restart this buff. That's awesome. That is amazing. And with how much restarting nature does, this card is going to be ridiculous. Whereas Corvid Conspiracy, yes, does 3/2/2, so it potentially does 1 damage more over the turn, but then you restart it and it goes back to an X, where it doesn't do anything until the next turn. Like, just being able to restart it for an additional 2 damage right when you restart it is really good. That's going to see a lot of potential. I think this is going to be like a 4.5 star card. Just it's a solid stat line, solid for what it does, very efficient damage. In the nature set where they utilize restarting, having something on the first corner so that when you restart it, you get that additional effect after it's been restarted is a lot better than I think a lot of people are going to see. And when you run Vicious Scalefang in a deck that utilizes the buff restart, and you start doing that and realize, hey, I'm getting like 6 damage from this one card every time I restart it, that's nuts. That's really good. That is redonkulously good. And yeah, I think this card is going to be like a 3 of in a lot of beast decks because every time you lay it, it's going to feel really good to just do 2 and 4 and maybe get that restart for the 2 and then 4 again. It's a good card. Really good card. Wild Growth. All right, 4 clunky corners. It's an elemental for forest. Okay, we'll see what they got going on. Attack ability. Damage equal to the number of forest buffs you have in play plus 1. Interesting. Now, I think there was some other cards back in Mythical that also ran like it did something and then was increased by the number of forest buffs you did. I think it was like the Mushroom King or something like that. There's even a back in Mythical a Mushroom Forest card that was like you draw a card for each forest buff you have in play. So I think it's really cool that they're adding more cards to kind of that archetype a little bit, where maybe you're just a really heavy forest buff player and you lay a lot of forest buffs, and then you use cards like that where it just you draw a lot of cards because you have a lot of forest buffs in play. You get damage based on the number of forest buffs you have in play. Where this one it doesn't even have a limit. Where I think that no, I think the one I'm thinking of where it deals damage to your opponent is based on how many buffs they have, plus 1 to a maximum of 5. So like that one relied on your opponent to have it, but it was a consistent forest buff. Maybe just laid in this deck. But I think that could be a fun archetype to explore, actually, is just having a bunch of forest buffs out in play. That one would be where the oh god, where did the card go now? Where is the card that I'm trying to think of? The Overlooked Defender beats out Moss Ridge Defender because it is a consistent forest buff that could stay out longer to utilize this ability. So, I mean, Wild Growth, I'm going to want to say is like, it's a 3-star card. Many people might contradict me on that, saying it's not that good. But I think the only reason I gave it a 3-star is because outside of that one archetype, you're probably never going to run this card. You're never going to run it unless you run a very heavy forest buff-oriented deck where your buffs stay out consistently, you're restarting them to make sure they stay out consistently, to get just this thing to do like 5 or 6 damage for the 4 corners that it is. Because obviously this doesn't rotate like a lot of the other stuff where it'll rotate. It's like, hey, if you don't use this ability, you wasted a turn for it. No, it stays out there, which means it also works for itself, which means if you have 3 Wild Growths out there, they all count towards each other. They're not unique. You can obviously only use one ability a turn, but like the first one will be better, the second one will be a little bit worse, and the third one will be a little bit worse. But by that time you use all of them, you'll have more forest buffs out to lay it. Where I think it's a fun card that needs to be explored in that certain major forest buff archetype that I can't wait to explore. Like so far I'm seeing like 3 or 4 different archetypes within one alignment, which is making me super excited that it's not focusing on trying to build one archetype per one color, so that we only have like 6 really good decks. This one could be a fun deck to try out. I can't wait to try it out. I hope you guys like try out all this fun stuff and what they're trying to do with these cards, but I'm going to give this a 3-star card. It's probably only going to be like a 1-star in draft. You're never going to want this. Mind you, it's going to do like 2 damage each turn, because it's a forest buff. It counts for itself. It doesn't say other forest buffs. It's the number of forest buffs you have in play. So the attack ability is always going to do 2. Maybe that's what you need is more poke damage. I don't know. It's up to you. But, I mean, it could be fun. It could be pretty fun to play. We'll see. Woods of Confusion. We have forest location buff. 3 corners that are non-dormant. Draw 1 card as this enters play. No hero can play a card of the same category as their enemy's last discarded card. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. The Woods of Confusion, it's a very tech, very defensive style card. Obviously you get to draw a card immediately when it comes into play, not when it expires, so that's already an increase to what some other cards I've seen in the past are. So it's instant value. But then, like, at the same time, you and your opponent kind of play it back and forth as long as this card is in play. And if you lay this card and then do an attack, they cannot attack you to remove this card. They have to defend, or they have to buff, or do some other things. And in which case, forests, I mean, utilizing that nature in general is very heavy on defend and on buff. And if you lay a buff, it doesn't go to the discard pile. So, like, utilizing it with certain attack cards that nature is now getting used to, getting all these cards, you can force your opponent to literally not be aggressive. If you're facing someone like Tech or Mountain, where it's very attack-oriented, you put an attack card down there, and then they're like, well, wow, this was cool. now my Colossi Ritual Site can't be used because I can't attack you. I can't remove this buff to even get around that because all my buff removals attack. It's kind of like it's a really good stopper if you can play it with the right cards. And then obviously it's like, hey, if your buff rotates out, your opponent can't lay a buff. But at the same time, it works against you too, where if you all of a sudden run into a guy in very heavy nature, and then one of his buffs expires, and now you can't lay buffs. And in nature, that could be detrimental. That's like, hey, all of my cards in here are buffs. Now what do I do if I can't lay a buff? I'm just going to maybe draw, and then it's like, as soon as it comes to that point, it's like for the next 2 turns or 1 turn, you and your opponent basically just do nothing, and you draw and refill your hands, and then you go all out as soon as this buff expires. But I think it's going to see place in tech. I don't see it being more than a one of in a deck, mostly to stop people in that situation, like I said, where they go off on like a Storm Shaman or a Colossi Ritual Site turn, and then you lay this and lay an attack card, or lay the attack card first, then lay this to make sure you can actually lay the attack card, because if the opponent has an attack card, you can't do that. Duh. But it's one of those like it's a very fun and interesting tech where it's all reliant on you when it comes out into play of what you're trying to stop your opponent from doing that turn. And then afterwards, like, your opponent can kind of use it to their advantage too. If they don't want you to heal anymore, they'll discard a defense, so you can't defend or restart your stuff. It's really weird. No, tech review is the last one. That'll be happening on Thursday. Tech is on Thursday. Storm is tomorrow. Tech is Thursday. But yeah, that's where I'm seeing this card. I think it's like I'll give it a 3-star. It's a 3-star just because it's a really solid card for what it does. It could be utilized in a lot of different situations. And it's so like opportunistically situational where it could be utilized in the main deck as opposed to a sideboard. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm giving it a 3-star. It's a well fun designed card that I think might see a little bit of play. Actually, it's not like a dead card. It's gonna be fun. All right, Zfling Mob. I think this is the last one for the action cards. So we have 1, 2, and 5. A Beast Spirit card. If you have more buffs in play than your target, deal damage to them. Okay. I really like the aspect. I know nature has been a very continuous keep your buffs on the board, keep them restarted and all this stuff. Their buff removal is very limited to 1, so you can't really get that really good value for 2 buff removal like a lot of the other classes do. But just the fact that a lot of their buffs are consistent, a lot of their buffs can be restarted a lot easier, makes it easier for you to have a lot of buffs on the board. So then this one does 1, 2, and 5. But the downside is, like, if you have it do 1 and 2, and then your opponent's like, okay, cool, I'm going to outbuff you on this turn until the 5 damage doesn't get through. This card ended with 3 damage, and then it was dead. Yes, you can restart it, hoping your buffs last longer, so it can get more value out of it. But in my opinion, like, it's pretty easy to shut down by the time it gets to that 3rd corner. Yes, you can restart it, and your opponent will then try and obviously outbuff you by that turn. It'll be removing your buffs. It'll time it really easy to counteract. I'm going to give this, compared to a lot of the other beast buff that I've seen, like a 2.5. It's a good card. I'm not saying it's a bad card. It's a good card. But over, like, the Vicious Scale Fang, even over the old one's Corvid Conspiracy, over Insect Swarm, obviously that's an insect card now, not a beast one, so you maybe don't run that in a beast deck. But, like, a lot of the other beast cards, maybe you just don't run this unless there's not a whole lot more beast buffs that have been transferred from the old set to this new set. Maybe, like, you're very limited to what your beast buffs are, in which case you just run this because it's a beast buff, and you want more beast buffs out there. But, yeah, I mean, I don't see this being drawn in draft a whole lot, unless your deck is, like, 100% buffs, and they're all 4 corners, and they all stay on the board really well, because then your opponent is also going to be drafting a lot of buffs, maybe some attack, I don't know. But, I mean, it's a 2.5. It's a decently designed card, but very easy to work around, where it's one of those buffs where it's like your opponent could literally remove other buffs and then shut this one down and basically make it dormant for its last corner, and then it'll expire doing nothing. Where it's not a buff that has to be removed itself, it's a buff that you can get, like, remove 2 buffs, but essentially remove 3 because this will do nothing when those buffs get removed. It's one of those where it's very counterintuitive, it's very easy to work around, and then they could just literally lay more buffs than you for that 1 turn and get nothing to happen. So I give it like a 2.5. It's a good card, beast. Maybe they really want to use it for late game when they're out of buffs and stuff like that. But it's not going to be used over a lot of the other beast cards that I've been seeing lately. Sorry. All right. Now onto the weapons or items. Sorry, as I was corrected yesterday, they are items because as much as I want to hit someone with a book, it's not a weapon. It's an item. So there. All right, we have Duskglade Tome, the forest item. Defendability: 1 healing if you have 20 or less health. Draw 1 card. Now this one, I think, is a phenomenal card. It's a lot of people were using like Leeching Scimitar, which was 2 damage. Heal yourself for 1 if your opponent has more than 15 health. Where this is just, hey, 1 if you're below, like Flanimo did. Flanimo was really good. Obviously, it's not that good anymore because it speeds up stuff that you don't want sped up. But this card is basically a better version of the now nerfed Flanimo. 1 healing if you have less than 20 health, but then draw a card. Drawing a card in nature is just, it's so good. It's so good, and it's really difficult to do for saying, I love the Agama Beast buff. Agama? What Agama Beast buff? The Draga? The Bloomback Draga? Is that the one you're thinking of, Grimjoe? I'm trying to think of what the Agama is. I don't know, maybe White Wolf can help you out. He's the go-to guy for card names in this stream. Anyway, Duskglade Tome. I think it's a 5-star card. You're going to run it just for the ability alone. Mind you, whatever Forest has to do. Forest has the Bloomback Draga in it. Forest has a lot of these really cool new insect stuff. It has the Monster's Defender for defensive. It has a Sumptuous Shaman for healing and stuff like that. Hibernating Agama. Thank you, White Wolf. No, that one was really fun. That one I thought was a really fun card. It was a very situational card. I would actually love to see it be played a little more. But no, I think that was a really fun and well designed card where it was at the end of the turn it removed it, if I remember correctly. That was a fun card. That was a really interesting and very uniquely designed card that I think could be used a lot more now. But anyway, back to this one. Defendability: 1 healing for 20 or less health, then draw a card. Just for the fact that you get to draw a card for using this ability makes this ability so much worth it. And then obviously if you're playing the more long game, you heal for 1. And healing for 1 is completely okay if you're less than 20. Like, it's way better than if you're less than 15. You always get that little bit of micro heal and you draw a card. This healing can also trigger abilities. Because it doesn't say, this can't trigger abilities. Obviously, it triggers abilities. 20 is such a high health where you're always most likely going to get that healing and that card draw. And if you're playing a more slow-oriented deck, drawing a card, healing for 1, outpacing your opponent when they can't really get you down, you'll get like 3 heals off and 3 draws by the time they'll be able to put back on the pressure. And just an ability that you consistently reuse like this is going to be really strong. This is a 5-star weapon just because the weapon alone is so good. Mind you, you get to put in forest cards. Like, this weapon is really fun. I think this weapon is going to be played a lot. Next one. All right. Superiority in Animal. Awesome. Attack ability: 2 damage, increase this by 1 if your recipient's last discarded card is a defend card. See, now this is what I was talking about with the Spirit of Balance, where I would have loved to seen something more like this, where it's like, hey, your opponent's trying to defend, so we'll put on pressure. We'll kind of counteract what they did with the defend. If it was an attack, we'll heal a little bit. Like, this is the card style that I wish Spirit of Balance actually had. Because this is literally, it's consistent of pressure. It's Animal. It's what Animal does. If you're healing, I'm going to hit you for a little bit more to make it so that your healing wasn't as efficient as you wanted it to be. If not, it's still 2 damage. Mind you, like I've been saying, 2 damage for an attack ability. Unless it's 3, it's not a good ability. But I mean, for animals, all your animal cards are most likely going to be buffs. Maybe if you run this weapon and you run, what's the buff I was talking about? The Bramble Spike Hunter, where it restarts after you attack. Maybe that's actually the deck. Like, you want to run this weapon with that buff, so that you can just use this ability to then restart Bramble Spike Hunter, and you always have an attack ability to utilize with that buff. Also, being superiority animal, a lot of cards are probably just going to run this with how the aggression of animal stuff is going to do. The Ashwood Nurturer is an animal that fetches for a beast card. So, like, or for, a beast card in your deck. So, like, splashing this item into other alignments and then splashing an Ashwood Nurturer for the beast fetch. Like, maybe this is the card to splash in for those beast decks to get the utilization that nature beast animal cards have for all of the other alignments that run beast. Maybe this is, like, the weapon that you want in those beast cards. I know we saw the Astro weapon that utilized beasts, but it wasn't even good. It was like the top. If the top card is for beast, you do something, and then it goes on the bottom of your discard pile. Ooh, it doesn't even go back in your deck. Like you don't even get that major benefit from it. This is just it's a decent weapon that's really good for stopping your opponent from defending and healing and all that stuff, where it pushes on a little bit more damage. Animal is where a lot of the good beast cards I think are going to come from this new set. Mind you, like a lot of the good, like Bloomback Draga is a forest card, and some of them were spirit, but like the Ashwood Nurturer alone, like I said, is a great card. 2 healing, fetch for a beast. That's an animal card. Run this weapon just for 3 of those to put into beast deck. I think this is going to be a great card. You're going to see this a lot. I'm only going to give this a 4-star rating compared to the last one, because just looking at the card, the ability is decent. 2 damage could be increased to 3, but you're mostly going to want to run this weapon for Ashwood Nurturer. Mind you, there is no other animal weapons to compare this to other than just like the basic 1 equip slot, all of mass superiority. They're vanilla weapons. So you can't really look it back and see what did the other really rare weapon do for this slot, because there was none. But I mean, it's a 4-star weapon, really solid, really well utilized, especially for beasts if they start doing aggression. But like I said, that's just for the beast one. I don't know what other animal cards you would want to add in a deck that is potentially this aggressive that aren't beasts. I mean, a lot of the really good aggressive animal cards are going to be beasts, so you're most likely only going to want to run this in that archetype, especially with how family-oriented Kindred is going to come out and be. So I'm going to give it a 4-star. I mean, even just in draft, it's probably really good. Because it's just an attack ability for 2 damage. And in draft, 2 damage abilities become ridiculously good. They're just consistent damage. Where it's like, I'm out of cards, now what do I do? Just keep hitting them for 2. That's all you do. So I give this a 4-star. This is going to be a very good weapon. I'm liking nature weapons so far. Soul, alright. Draw 1 card at the start of your turn if your enemy has 7 or more cards in their hand. Alright, guys. As I was going back before to saying, I forgot what the card was. Feasting Skeetos, where it's another card, obviously, that relies on your opponent to have a very large hand size. Otherwise, it does nothing. Mind you, it's not even Superior Soul, so, like, if you want to run Soul and do really fun Soul things, you might just want to run the vanilla weapon. This one, obviously, it's like, yeah, you know, it could have a potential where if your opponent's playing the long game, you get to draw a card at the beginning of your turn. But at the same time, you lay this weapon, or item, you lay this item, and your opponent looks at it and goes, okay, well, I'll just always have 6 cards in my hand, so you never get the benefit from that. Cool. And 6 cards in your hand is really easy to maintain if you're playing just like 1 a turn, or usually if you have 6 cards in your hand and you're not doing anything, it's because you have like all conditional, all defensive cards, and you're waiting for more aggressive stuff. So like, you're very rarely going to come against an opponent who is consistently holding 7 or more cards to really get weapon or benefit from this weapon, unless we find a deck where it makes your opponent draw a ridiculous amount and it gets them up to that 7 or more hand size without them being able to lay cards to get it down below 7. I just think 7 is just too high of a number to really get something out of this item. Maybe if it was like 5 or more cards, it would have been really good. I know there's a buff that's like if your opponent has 5 or more cards, poke them for 2 and unaligned. That buff was even very underutilized in the meta in the sets, because it's like, well, your opponent has to have 5 cards, and a lot of times, no, more than 5 cards. So it's like, well, cool, I have 5, so 5 cards is always just a really good number to have your hand size, because then nothing hurts you above 5, and you can do stuff with 5 cards in your hand. So I'm unfortunately gonna give this like a 1-star. It's not gonna see play. It's better to just run the superiority in Soul, so you can do fun stuff with Soul. Then that way it can't be removed with the unaligned weapon removal. You're never, almost ever, going to see value out of this card. It's 7 is just too high of a number for your hand size for the fun things that you could be doing, because your opponent's always going to play around it. They're never going to not do anything with more than 7 cards in their hand. So it's a 1-star because, like I said, 7 is just way too high. Way too high in my opinion. All right, on to the combos, everybody. On to the combos, the fun part of all this game, right? So we have 3, 3, 3. 2 animal and a soul. Awesome. Burn. So for some reason this combo can't be brought back. Okay. Combos really are not brought back a whole lot outside of like Astral and maybe Dread. So, okay. Call damage to your target. Increase this, or damage to your target if this buff expires. Wait. No. There's a period there. Boo. So damage to your target. Okay, so 3, 3, 3. Decent damage-wise. If this buff expires, move 2 discarded beast cards to your hand. I see, because it's a card fetch, that's why it has burn. Okay. I mean, this card this card could be fun in a beast deck. Um, it is one of those cards that's like you only really want to lay this late game, because if you lay it too early, there's not enough beast cards in your discard pile to put back in your hand that you really want to put in there. But like if I mean, just thinking about this, if you run this card late and then you bring back two of the Spineback Rockjaws, and then you restart the buffs that are already out there, like that's just insanely good value. But yeah, I think it's a good buff for beasts. So it's like a 3-star buff, obviously utilized in a beast archetype. It's nothing that really ruins the game. It can obviously bring back the Draga, which is a beast card, which is awesome. But like at that point in the game, you're also using a lot of your animal cards. So you also have to keep that in mind, that like all your animal cards that are most likely beast buffs that you're laying, you have to hold back like 2 of them so you can still lay this buff in the end. To then bring back 2 beast cards to then try and get that final push. The damage is fine. It's nothing overwhelming, nothing out of the ordinary. I think the best card about it is you use this to bring 2 beast cards back, but it has to expire, which means your opponent can then remove it and you don't get the value from it. So that's why I'm giving it like a 3-star rating. You're going to see it in beast card. You're going to see it in beast buffs. Probably not going to be used till late game, so it can be used to pay for the other beast combos and whatnot like that. But at the end of the day, it's a buff where it takes 2 full turns to go off for them to expire for the 3rd turn for you to get the 2 beast cards back. Hopefully those cards can help finish you and push you to the end of the game. But the way I've been seeing most of the beast stuff, it is very consistent damage, very perpetual damage on your opponent. So by the time you get to the point where you want to lay this, hopefully you've already won. I mean, hopefully you've applied that much pressure with your beast damaging cards where you don't even really need to lay this card to get 2 beast cards back to then continuously finish the game. Hopefully you've been restarting your buffs, doing the damage with beasts, just hammering on and apply the pressure the entire game, drawing the cards with certain mechanics and whatnot, where like by the time you play this card, you're just like, okay, cool, you're at like 4 health anyway. You're dead because I have cards that just deal damage. That's why I'm giving it a 3-star. It's going to be run, but it's not going to be played a whole lot in decks. It's most likely going to be used to pay for other combos, if anything. Which is why the payment is fine. The payment is fine because it's be used to pay for a lot of the other combos you're going to want to lay. Alright, next one we have here is Camouflage. Camouflage, we have Beast, or Animal and Nature, 0, 1, and 2. You cannot be attacked. Increase damage done by your attacks by rotation. Now, this one I actually think is a very well-designed buff for Nature, because Nature really didn't really have a whole lot of, mind you, like defensive buffs. It had a lot of, it had stuff that was just like, hey, you heal, or like you deal minor damage to your opponent, but it never had something where it's like, hey, you can't attack me. It never had the Shrouder Knight that Dread had. It never had the Storm Wall that Storm had. We're applying this, literally it's like, hey, for the next 3 turns, I can't be attacked. But then it also increases the stuff done by your attacks by 1 and 2. So like the next 2 turns, you get to apply a little bit more pressure while you're camouflaged, essentially. A lot of the attack cards that I've been seeing in Nature just in this set have all been Insectoid. So I really want to see this be run in an Insectoid deck, which utilizes the fact that, like, you get down to the point where you're pretty low on health. Maybe your deck is pretty low on cards, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can't be attacked now. This is what's going to happen. Then you start really applying some of the pressure with those nice Insectoid attack cards, and really put the pressure on and make it so that obviously your opponent can't be attacked, so they're holding all their attack cards. But maybe that's when they're like, oh, I need to start defending, or because their deck is mostly aggressive, they just keep drawing cards, and you have them on the ropes for 2 turns, and you really start applying your own backwards pressure against them. Obviously, you can still be hurt by buffs, so it's not damage prevention. It's a really well designed card. I think it's going to see probably a lot of play. It's really cheap to play, which means that when you're in a pinch, it's not difficult to lay down. Where it's not like, oh no, I need like 3 cards to be able to lay this, otherwise I'm dead. It's like, no, it's just 2. For the next 3 turns, you can't be attacked. Cool. It's a really well designed buff. I think you're going to see a lot of it. I'm going to give it a 4-star rating. It would have got a 5-star if it was like your buffs dealt more damage, because that's insane. All Nature is very buff heavy, but the attack is fine. The attack damage increase is completely fine. Like I said, in certain archetypes, and they're giving more attack cards to Nature now, from what I've been seeing, where I think this is just a really well designed card that Nature did need for a defensive / offensive push to really have a mild turn swing. It's no Rupture. It's no Mountain Rupture game-ending card. It's not that. It's just a more sustained card, which is something that Nature, I think, needed with its very trickling heal. It never had burst heal, so it needs those few turns to kind of recoup for a little bit. And this fills that spot perfectly. You're going to see a lot of this being played, and you're gonna really hate it because you can't remove it outside of Storm because you can't be attacked. So for the next 3 turns, you're safe. Your buffs are fine. Your buffs are safe. Grappling Roots, 2 Forest, 1 Animal, 3/3/3, combo buff. Damage from action cards cannot deal more than 3 damage to you. Damage to your target. This is also a really well-designed, kind of more defensive / recuperate card. Just because it's a slightly better Colossi artifact that at the same time does damage back to your opponent, where it's not just like you're sitting here being like, hey, you know, you're fumbling alchemists, all this stuff is only going to do a 3 to me, but at the same time, it's like, no, it's a 9 damage over a total of those 3 turns. So, I don't know if you're going to see this being played over a lot of the other cards. I'm trying to think what buffs this has to compete with in the 2 Forest, 1 Animal slot, if any. Which I really like the fact that they're making a lot of these really cool payments a lot more different. Territorial Dominance. No, that's 2 Beast, 1 Forest. Sorry, my bad. Treetop Tribunal is what this has to compete with. So in comparison to that one, which that one was run a lot in Nature because it was basically a mildly better Vine Lash. Then again, a lot of the decks that were running those 2 combos were also using Mimicking Horror for the 1-turn kill combos. I don't know. That one was also very offensive. This is very defensive. So maybe based on the way your archetype or your deck style works, you want your combos to be more defensive because the 30 action cards you run are very offensive. As opposed to when Treetop Tribunal was run, all of your 30 action cards were very defensive and your combos were very offensive. It's kind of that style. So, I mean, this one fills the very, very nice niche of being the complete opposite of what its counterpart runs to. I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. It's a solid buff. Prevents you from dying to a lot of action cards. Obviously, you can still be killed by combos. It deals damage to your target, so it's applying that little pressure while mitigating damage to you. I think it's just a really well-designed card. It's not overwhelming damage, not overwhelming damage reduction, or not even really damage reduction. It can't deal more, which means it does not count towards damage reduction, which means like Sneaky Creeble and all that stuff cannot still get increased to 4 or past it. It's just, nope, just only 3. Max of 3. That's it. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's a well-designed card that the new archetype of Nature that I'm seeing, which is going to be more aggressive in the action card style, needs combo buffs or combos like this where they need to have those like 5 cards of defensive stuff to keep them in the game. And I think that's really good. I think it's really fun to see Nature kind of take a swing and be more well-rounded as opposed to stuck in one archetype. I think that's really cool. Hive Mind. All right, we have 2 Animal, 2 Forest. Hive Mind. When you play an Insectoid card, deal 2 damage to all other heroes, heal for 1, and draw 1 card. Alright guys, we have the linchpin for Insectoid decks. This is amazing. This is a 5-star card for Insectoid, because if you look at Breach the Veil and say that is not a 5-star buff, I will come over to your webcam and point a finger at you and be like, are you serious? Have you never played it? Have you never seen your opponent play it and been immediately threatened? Having this in an Insectoid deck where all of your cards are Insectoids, mind you, 2 damage to all other heroes. Multiplayer is going to be so much fun, guys. I cannot wait till that archetype comes out. It's going to be so great. Play multiplayer. I want you to do it. See how much fun it is just to be like Pestilence the entire group and have everyone give you the stink eye and be like, ah! All right. But no, I mean, you 2 damage, heal for 1, and draw a card every time you lay an Insectoid card. That's, from what I'm seeing from this archetype, is going to help you thin your deck out, because every time you lay a card, you draw a card. It heals for 1, so it sustains you in the game. It's that card where like you lay it and your opponent goes, that needs to go. That needs to go right now. That needs to get out of here, or we're all dead. And that kind of pressure from a buff is amazing when you're like, okay, cool, I'll lay this, and if I even get like 2 or 3 turns, draw these cards after I lay these Insectoid cards, really start thinning out my deck, it gets removed. That means a lot of your other buffs that you're going to lay, like Sipid Queen, is not going to get removed. All of the other really strong Insectoid cards, like Insect Swarm for the perpetual insect damage, all that stuff is going to hit the board and stick on the board, because of the major threat that Hive Mind was. And like even in late game, you don't even really care about Hive Mind because you don't care about the 2 damage, you don't care about the heal for 1. So it is one of those cards that this is going to apply pressure in the early and mid game, and late game it's going to be like, well, okay, Because obviously, yeah, you'll want your deck to be empty for Sipid Queen, but it's like, okay, your deck's empty now. I'll lay this card. My deck is empty, so I don't get the draw. I just an extra 2 damage and heal for 1. It kind of mitigates it, where you really want to lay this to cycle through your Insectoid deck. The White Wolf says, I think they should do a small set that this card's focused on multiplayer and can only be used in multiplayer, kind of like the Commander stuff or MTG. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be really cool if they make a specific kind of how Mythical was like half reprinted cards, half new cards, where just those half new cards were all based around multiplayer. I think that'd be a really fun set for them to develop, is just all the damage is really mitigated to like 1 or 2, but it's just all multiplayer. And that way people are more enthused about building a multiplayer deck, a really fun multiplayer deck, and just going ham. Mind you, if every card in there was multiplayer, the game would feel like you're facing everyone at the same time, where like you need a nice balance of multiplayer and one action card to really eliminate one person faster than the others, so that you can still get that benefit from multiplayer. If you guys read the rules, if you kill your target, you get benefits like 5 cards back, healing, and all that stuff, where you get points, and the points actually matter because that's who the winner is. So like at the same time, you want everyone to get low, but you want your target to die first so that you get the benefit. You don't want everyone to die all at once. So I feel like a nice balance between those would be really fun, but having more of a variety of multiplayer cards like this will be a lot of fun, and I think that would be a really interesting archetype to deal with in like a small set, like I was saying with Mythical, where like half of them are reprinted cards, but half of them are more centered on the multiplayer, where it makes you want to play multiplayer. It makes you want to be able to go into that archetype. But I feel like those cards should come out when the app supports it, because unless you live in an area where you have like 5 or 6 friends for multiplayer to really utilize those cards, they're not going to be that sought after as opposed to the other ones. So like I feel like that set should come out as soon as the app can support multiplayer, because then you'll be able to play with your friends that you've met online or at conventions and be able to play multiplayer on your phone, as opposed to getting everyone together to play for like 2 or 3 hours. So it would be a really fun idea, White Wolf, but I feel like it's something that needs to happen down in the future once all the technology and everything's all caught up to it. But definitely, I would love to see that set come out. I would love to see that. All right, Nature's Fury. 8 damage, heal yourself for 4, 1 of each of the payments. This could be fine. This could be completely fine. Now, if we're going on some of the buffs, mind you, that have 1 of each of the payments, we're looking at Vinelash. Obviously, Vinelash is the #1 buff that has this for payment. Vinelash also just deals 14 to your opponent the next turn. So this is like 8 damage, 4 healing. It's a 12-point swing, where Vinelash was a 14-point swing. Very offensive. Unfortunately, I don't see this actually being that good of a card. Fail Rage is 2 more damage for 1 less payment. And really for these combo attacks, you don't really want an even swing. You want your combo attack to be that final finishing killing blow. So you want something more than 10 damage. And maybe they're making this where it's 8 damage. Maybe they're going to start making a lot of these combo attacks do less than 10, so that archetypes such as the Morgok the Imbuer can be more playable, where if you're at 10 health, you're not that worried about dying in one shot and all that stuff, and they can start making that 10 or less health archetype a little more viable to play. And that's maybe what this combo card is starting to develop, starting to play more out. But outside of Vinelash, there's Sacred Aura. That's one that pays for the same thing. Deal damage to target and healing, X4/4. So like even that one, you still deal 8 damage and you heal for an extra 4 as the card rotates. Nature's Fury, I mean, it just it feels pretty underwhelming compared to some of these other buffs and other attack cards that we're getting. I feel like if you're running attack, you want to be running Feral Rage. It's cheaper, 2 more damage. You want to be really aggressive with it. I mean, even Ambush is a potential 13 damage for 2 payments. Territorial Dominance is a potential 15 damage, or 14 damage for almost the same payment as 3 payments. Where like the damage and healing is nice, but being so average in mid-swing, it just kind of, it feels underwhelming as opposed to a lot of these other nature or combos that they've put out, that you really don't even want to play this over Vinelash, for even just for payment-wise. Because the damage isn't enough to really be push damage past the cards that can do like 10 to 16. The healing isn't enough to have combos that literally like heal you for even 5 or more. Like Regrowth heals you for 5 and brings 2 buffs into play. That's way more value than just 1 less healing and a little bit of damage that can be prevented or healed back from. This combo, I mean, outside of draft, is probably not going to be seen. And even if in draft you have to pay this with all 3 of the nature ones, and a combo like this is then only used to pay for other combos. It's almost never used to play. So, like, I don't know. I give this like a 1.5 for all the combos that Nature has access to right now. This is just it's a very underwhelming combo. For the payment cost, it's fine, but if you are a more centered deck nowadays, combos rarely you only run like one combo like this to help pay for, maybe two in a certain deck, but all the other combos that pay for stuff like this are the same, one of each, are just better to run than Nature's Fury. It's a very underwhelming combo, and I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play compared to a lot of the other stuff. All right, Oaken Symbiosis, 2 Spirit. Awesome. We're finally getting a double Spirit past Spiritual Turmoil, which was almost never seen. At the start of your turn, deal 2 damage to your target if they have more health than you. Your target cannot receive healing while they have more health than you. Now this card is phenomenal. I love the concept of this card. Obviously, you lay this and it's like, hey, if you're gonna hurt me, you're gonna go right down with me. So like it's a mutual destruction type of card. And with how much burst damage out of nature you have to kind of line up Vine Lash or Territorial Dominance or Feral Rage and all this stuff, or what was it, Feral Spirit? Feral Rage? What's the one I've been trying to say? Feral Rage for 10 damage. Like if you're going low, you make it so your opponent has to go low with you. If they're higher than you, they take 2, or they start slowly dwindling down towards you. They can't heal themselves back up. They can't spike heal if you're both really low. So then it all comes down to, okay, who's got the more burst damage? And all their damage in nature is their only burst damage comes from their combos, really. All of their other damage is very periodical, very cyclical, where it's like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. Like it's very micro damage, all compiled at once. Where there's not going to be a turn where like, cool, you're like at 15 and I'm at 10, and all of a sudden now you're at 5 and I'm at 10, so now you can heal again. You're never going to have a turn like that in nature. It's always going to be like, okay, I'm going to slowly bring you down, and if you hit me for large numbers, you can't heal back up. Well, I just keep slowly grinding you down, especially with this dealing damage also. That's going to help you a lot. I think that unfortunately, this card is probably only going to be seen in certain archetypes. You're probably not going to run this in a very aggressive style deck like Beast, because obviously in an aggressive style like that, you are always just going to want to make sure your opponent is consistently going low. You don't care about your own health. Hopefully at that point in those type of decks, you are consistently applying pressure, making your opponent have to play on the defensive side more than you, so you can just keep piling on the pressure, and you're most likely always going to be at a higher health than them, which means this buff does nothing. So I can see this deck, or this card, being played in a much more control-y style nature deck. But then again, in those control-y style nature decks, they run a lot of healing, they run a lot of damage prevention, a lot of card draw to kind of get you to that point where their big spike damage can kill you. So like, maybe this is a card that works really well in Insectoid, where yes, it is periodical damage, yes, it plays both the aggression and defensively, where Oaken Symbiosis is just that really solid buff. After Hive Mind gets killed, you lay Oaken Symbiosis and you just kind of dwindle them down while you're not healing as much, and then you really bring it into the late game where you just finish them off. Maybe that's where Oaken Symbiosis sits. I think it's a very well-designed card. It's definitely probably the only good double spirit combo that's going to be run, especially if the only one is Spiritual Turmoil, which was never run almost ever. And Spiritual, it's a fine card. It comes back to your hand, but it like almost because of it, everyone just removed it right away, and it never got to do anything past its X or first 5 damage. This one at least is a continuous one, where it is a threat if left untamed, where it's a mutual destruction card. I think it's a 4-star combo. It's not a game-ending combo. It's one of those where literally it's like, if I'm going down, I'm going to take you with me cards. And those are always fun to play, but they're not... I mean, at the same part, it's like, well, you don't want to heal too with this card out, so you are in a very bad spot to just be spike killed as well, when you're trying to just bring your opponent down low and spike kill them too. So, yeah, it's very temperamental, but I think it's a very well-designed card, and I'm sure it'll find its spot in a certain deck that just makes this, that uses a lot of benefit from this. So I'm going to go to 4-star. You'll see this card be played a lot. I mean, it's going to be a bomb in draft. This card is going to be amazing in draft, where like, okay, cool, you can't heal, let's go. Who's got more damage? And you obviously played around it where they didn't. So, I mean, this card is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see it. All right, we have 1 Clinky Corner, 2 Spirit, 1 Forest. Combo buff. Draw 3 cards as this enters play. Already right off the bat, amazing. If you pay 3 cards for this combo, when this comes into play, you just draw 3 cards. You get those cards right back. If you paid 1 or 2 cards from it, it's a 1 card or 2 card advantage. That's awesome value just out of playing this combo alone. Then it has a defend ability, restart any number of buffs on any heroes. That's really good, especially with how Nature's been doing, restarting a lot of their buffs, having it's not just like restart 2 buffs or restart 3, it's restart any number of buffs on any heroes, which means if an opponent is like waiting for a buff to expire or something like that, you can just, guess what? I'm going to restart all my buffs, and then like that one I'm also going to restart so that you don't get the expiration factor from it. Like you could really mitigate an opponent. Yes, they get the value of having that buff restart and have it run its whole course, but at the same time, like there might be some buffs that you don't care if they just continuously go. In tech, maybe it's like, hey, yeah, I want that buff to restart so it deals damage to you before it gets to its big thing again, something like that. It could be very interesting to see and have go on. But I mean, I think this card is gonna. It's a really well designed card. What else is out there for 2 spirit and 1 forest? However, just see if it has a contradictor one where something could be better that was played previously. I don't see one actually. I think this is the only one that fits the 2 spirit, 1 forest, which is fine. So it fits its own niche. I am gonna give this like a 3.5. A 3.5 obviously because it's really good. You get 3 cards when you play it. Perfect for just recycling your cards. Defendability, restart like all of your buffs essentially if you want it to. It is clunky corners, so you get that potential. But by the time it gets around where you like lay this card, have all the buffs that you want to restart, get them to their final corner, then use this, a good chance is your opponent has already removed this. So it's really just pay for it, draw 3 cards, and then if it lives long enough, you can restart your buffs. I see this once again being a mid to late game combo. Its payment is utilized to pay for a lot of other combos, and then at the same time, which Spirit is actually really easy to hold on to because that's all your tech cards. So those are the situational ones that you have a lot of in your hands at sometimes, like your buff removal, all this stuff. So that's probably not that difficult to pay for even in the late game. So that's completely fine. But yeah, it doesn't have a really early game presence because it's always going to get removed. They don't want you to restart, and even then, you need to have a decent board to be able to get a good utilization out of that. So yeah, I think it's like one of those combos. It's very situational to be able to time properly. Otherwise, it's just you pay 3 cards to lay it and then draw 3 cards. It's like recycling those 3 cards if you want to look at that. Unless you pay for it with a combo and something else, then you get a card advantage off of it. So it's like a 3.5. I think it may be seen playing by like some budget decks, and if you're playing a popper tournament, it's a really good card. But I still think there's other buffs or combos for nature that are better than this one, that are going to be more on the aggressive style as opposed to more tempo oriented. And with how tempo and aggressive these nature cards are being, we already have a lot of mechanics that restart your buffs from action cards alone. You don't really want your combo to do the same thing your action cards are doing. You want your combo to do something different so that you have a wide variety of your deck to be able to win. So that's how I'm seeing it as this card, is it does what an action card does better, but there are so many action cards that do this same thing that why go so full on a gimmick when you don't really need to? Because you don't win on a full gimmick, you win on a gimmick working efficiently, and this is just going really heavy on something that you don't need to. So that's how I'm seeing it. Stampede. So 1 of each payment, draw 2 cards, play up to 4 beast or insectoid cards without stat restrictions. Alright, this card is definitely going to be seen. This card is going to be seen in almost every beast/insectoid deck. Yes, it's easy to pay for. It's easy to then use this combo to pay for a lot of other combos. You draw 2 cards right when you do it. Then you get to play up to 4 beast or insectoid cards without stat restrictions. Now, this does, I think, I'm trying to think, because it doesn't say move, it's play. And according to the rules, you can't play cards of the same name in the same turn. So I'm not sure if this kind of works around it, because that's not technically a stat restriction. It's more along the lines of like, hey, I can play all 4 animal cards without having the animal mastery. So I'm not sure if that still kind of works. If not, you could lay like 2 Vicious Scale Fangs and 2 Corvid Conspiracy and just go ham on the damage for it. But the reason this card is a lot better than it looks is because it draws you 2 cards. So paying for this is obviously 2 or 3 cards, but then you draw 2 and you can at least still lay up to maybe 2 or 3 beasts and have them all come into play at the same time. Especially after drawing the 2, maybe you have a really good hand after that. So this card is going to be one of those overwhelming cards. Could be really fun, kind of mid game. I don't see this being played early game because obviously you want to be able to draw your cards, and by that time you want to be able to just like play one buff a turn, really put the pressure on. If you're laying this and then all of a sudden you lay 4 buffs, by that time you've drawn all those cards. Your opponent has probably drawn buff removal to remove the stuff that you've done. So this card is more going to see mid to late game for that just really spike in tempo and pressure, which makes it completely fine because having it be one of each elemental is good to pay for the other combos that you want to lay early game and then utilize this in the late game. So I think this is like a... I'm going to say this is going to be a 4.5 star card where it's not a necessity to run it like Hive Mind was in that certain archetype. It's not a necessity probably to even run in a Beast deck because for Beast, you're probably just running like Territorial Dominance and Feral Rage, and those are going to be your game ender cards. This is just like a really nice mid-range card where you just get to lay a bunch of buffs. You get to lay a bunch of stuff and really could get a good board presence out there. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of giving it like a 4.5, where it's not groundbreaking, it's not game-ending. It's just it's gonna find its own way into the Beast and Insectoid families for nature, and it's a really good combo, one of each payment. And it's gonna be that spike in tempo you need to put your opponent more on the defensive side if played at the right time and you're not too low on health, so that later on you can play for the Feral Rage or the Territorial Dominance and really just hit home after this stuff dwindles them down a lot more rapidly than before. I like it. I like it a lot. This is going to be a good combo to play. All right, Tree Whispers. 2 Forest, 2 Spirit. We finally got the third one of the 2/2. So we have 4 corners. Your forest action buffs don't rotate. This card is, I think, going to be really good in that archetype I was talking about, where it's phenomenally heavy on forest buffs, where your forest buffs don't rotate, which means they don't go away, which means you can use that ability on those. It's like, hey, I attack you for all my forest buffs in play, and it doesn't conditionally rotate. You play it at the proper time where your Root Singer just stays on the 2 corner. It heals you for 2 and draws you a card at the beginning of every turn for the next 4 turns. Like it's that stuff where, like, if played appropriately, like I said, it's a 4-cost combo, so you're going to want to hold off for the right time to lay it. And it's going to be a dominating buff for that one archetype, and that's why I'm giving it a 5-star rating, because it's only going to be seen in that archetype. Otherwise, this buff is dead. This buff is not going to do you any good. You're not going to run it compared to this other stuff. But like, this one card makes that archetype viable and playable, and it's not just like, well, this started off being a gimmick. We'll see if it does, like, maybe wins me 35% of my games. With this card, like, the moment you lay it, your deck becomes a dominating presence. And those kind of buffs, those kind of combo cards that you lay and your opponent goes, wow, I am in a boatload of trouble all of a sudden. Those are the buffs that are like very dominating, have their presence known. Those are the 5-star combos where you play them and it's almost like you hit a home run in baseball. You know, you're way better than the Vikings kicker was. That kind of thing. But yeah, like this buff makes that archetype completely 100% viable. And then because obviously Regrowth is also a 2 forest card, you're going to run Regrowth in that deck to then bring Tree Whispers back and make it so that you get another 4 turns where your forest buffs don't rotate out. And obviously you get to bring back one of your forest buffs because it brings back 2 buffs. Like, utilizing those 2 combos just in that deck alone makes this a really strong buff, a really strong combo buff that that archetype, and like I said before, I can't wait to try that archetype out along with the Insect and Beast and all that other stuff they're doing with nature in this set. That this one is one of those cards that, like, if you don't have this card, building that archetype is going to be very difficult, and playing that archetype is going to be even more difficult. But because this card is that strong, that becomes probably a competitive archetype as opposed to just being a casual one. That's why I'm giving it 5 stars, because that much power increase just from one card in a certain deck means that it's a dominating presence, and it's almost an auto-include, and if you don't have it, you need to get it. Like, that's why it's a 5-star. Alright guys, that's it for my nature review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope my explanations on the ratings were good. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, I'm posting this to my YouTube channel down below. If you want to look at it, copy paste it into YouTube, go follow me or subscribe on there so I can get that going and I can actually have a legit YouTube name as opposed to like it sounds like a fax machine at the end. Yeah, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, please let me know. Send me a Twitch chat. Send me a comment on the Facebook page once you get to it. If you think I misread something or I looked at something wrong, but like, no, this card is actually like a 4-star card, not a 2-star because of this and this and this. Tell me. I want to be able to discuss this with you. I want to be able to hear your opinions on these, maybe change my mind about this. Maybe I can discuss it, reevaluate some of these cards. You know, obviously after the meta has been growing out, I'll do another review of like the low cards that I said were bad that were actually really good, or vice versa. I'll definitely be posting one of those videos out. Yeah, I'm really happy you guys came and enjoyed the stream. I hope you guys learned a lot about the nature set that I totally did. I really hope the insectoid archetype is going to be what I want it to be, because if it is, that's going to be so much fun to build like a Golgari set in Kindred, in Lightseekers alone, that I cannot wait to test that one out. Yeah, tomorrow I will be on, same time from 7 to 9. I will be doing the Storm Kindred review. After that, on Thursday, will be 7 to 9, we'll do Tech. Like I said before, my unaligned one I will do on my own time, because unaligned is going to be really short. I'm trying to look here at unaligned. There are only 10 new cards for unaligned, so it's going to be a really quick one, maybe even like a half-hour video. I'll just post that one right to YouTube, and I will let you guys know when I do, so you guys can go check that out, leave comments, questions, and concerns about it. But I don't think it's going to be a one where I'll actually just do a Twitch stream about it. I will not, unfortunately, probably be streaming this weekend. If I do, it'll be Sunday evening when I get home. Me and my girlfriend are going to go to her hometown for her grandparents' 60th anniversary party, so it's going to be a really, really special occasion for her and me to celebrate with her family. So I will not be on Friday or Saturday, Sunday when we get back home, depending on what time we get back home. I might stream for a little bit, especially because by that time Kindred will be out, and that's when I'll be like really wanting to get into it. And hopefully I can spend like a good chunk of time on just playing Kindred and building some of these decks. Hope it's more than just like an hour, because I really want to dive into this. I really want to start exploring some of these new sets. And if as soon as Kindred does come out, like every day I'll have like a deck spotlight where I'll try and do an archetype for a few hours, and that'll be the stream. That way I can really focus on trying to build some of these decks, as opposed to switching a deck after every 3 games and just really fast pacing through this stuff. I want to try and focus on building some of these archetypes up, and I really hope you guys enjoy that too, because there are so many different new possibilities this Kindred set has just brought to the table, and I really cannot wait, and I hope you guys are just as patient about this as I am. So I'm really happy you guys came, stopped by. You know, if you know other friends that like Lightseekers, tell them to check it out. Check out my YouTube channel, give me a follow on Twitch so we can keep supporting the stream, keep trying to build up a follower base, and I can hopefully do this a lot more often if you guys are really enjoying the content like I'm enjoying creating the content for you guys. So I'm happy to be doing this. I'm happy you guys are enjoying it. I love the discussions we're having. I love all the stuff to hear from you. And if you guys even have like any deck discussions or want me to take a look at a deck, if you think my opinions are pretty valid and you're like, wow, I'm pretty smart. Hey, I built a deck. Can you take a look at it? It doesn't feel somewhat right. Maybe I'm not missing a card. Maybe you have some different options. I'd love to do that. I'd love to deck discuss with you guys. Really help you out, help me out as a player in the community, and really get this game off the ground. I felt a little stale because we were all waiting on Kindred, but now that Kindred's out, there's going to be so much potential, and I really want to start discussing this game with you guys, and that's why I'm doing these review streams, so that we can talk about the cards before we actually get to play with the cards. So thank you guys for stopping by. Thank you guys for enjoying the stream as much as I'm enjoying this, and I will catch you guys tomorrow or the next time, and I will see you all later. Ciao.